What happens when you survive corporate burnout in your past life, reincarnate into a fantasy empire, and still end up chained to an imperial office typewriter? Look at our protagonist, typing away at her desk like her life depends on it, pondering the ultimate cosmic question: when on earth is a corporate wage slave actually happy? Is it when you finally save up 15 glorious days of paid time off to escape on a tropical vacation? Or when your boss tosses you a pocket change bonus that barely covers coffee? Honestly, the soul floating right out of her body at the bottom panel is every single one of us on a Monday morning. The golden clock on her desk keeps ticking away while her fingers clatter across the typewriter keys. Every single typed line brings her one step closer to her ultimate secret agenda. With a sneaky little smile creeping onto her lips, she whispers to herself that the long-awaited moment has finally arrived. Her eyes light up with pure radiance as she holds up her golden paper. The true answer to happiness isn't paid leave or tiny bonuses. She stands up from her desk with total conviction. You can practically feel the sheer relief radiating off her as she prepares to execute her exit strategy. Her grand revelation? She has officially hoarded enough cold hard cash to literally swim in gold coins for the rest of her life. Look at her diving headfirst into a mountain of treasure like a complete menace. Seriously, achieving early retirement and swimming in cash is the real anime power fantasy we all actually care about. Not only is her bank account stacked, but she also completely dismantled the main plotline that was supposed to throw the pink-haired female lead into endless danger. With her heels clicking sharply against the polished wooden floor, nothing stands between her and freedom. She marches right up to her handsome division chief's desk and hands over a piece of paper. He glances up, casually asking what she needs, completely clueless about the bombshell about to drop on his head. Standing tall with an unshakable gaze, she stares him down and announces that she has a crucial announcement to make. She slams her letter of resignation right onto his desk and declares that she is officially quitting. Talk about the ultimate mic drop moment in front of your supervisor. His brain completely short-circuits as he mutters out a dumbfounded response. He genuinely did not see this coming. She calmly explains that her work here is finished, and there is zero reason for her to remain in this department for another short pause. He just sits there in dead silence, his eyes hidden behind dark shadows as the atmosphere drops below freezing. Layla internally pats herself on the back, assuming her boss is just processing the massive heartbreak of losing his top worker. In her mind, she's already running off into a bright sunny meadow, waving goodbye to corporate slavery forever. We've all rehearsed this exact dramatic exit speech in our heads 1,000 times. Suddenly, the division chief surges to his feet with terrifying force, slamming his palms onto the wood. Her eye twitches as a drop of nervous sweat rolls down her cheek. Wait, why is he reacting so intently? Instead of begging her to stay, he locks eyes with her and confesses that he has been waiting for this exact moment for ages. "You were waiting for me to quit?" she screams in total disbelief inside her head. She takes a deep breath to collect herself, reasoning that even if it's awkward that he knew she complained about quitting every single day, at least she's finally free. But then he leans in closer, praising her by saying that finding an official as absolutely flawless as Layla is nearly impossible. His cheeks flush bright crimson as he clutches his chest over his beating heart, confessing that every time he looked at her, his heart felt like it was going to explode. And right there in the middle of a resignation meeting, he drops the ultimate bombshell and asks her to go out with him. Look at her face, completely turning into a doodle with giant question marks popping out. The artist deserves an award for this legendary gag expression. She went from top-tier bureaucrat to a broken NPC in one frame. Can you believe it? On the exact same day she finally ditches that job in a fantasy play, her supervisor, totally drops a bomb. He's in love with her. Talk about crazy timing, right? Flashback time. Cursing her absolute disaster of a life, we cut back to the grand Arpent Imperial Palace under the bright blue sky. Layla grabs her head in sheer agony, realizing that the web novel title Beyond the Golden Gate was literally named after the palace gates she commutes through every single morning. It was named after a daily commute? The reason she is so completely furious and losing her mind right now is because she literally just unlocked the memories of her past life from modern Earth. In her former life, she was just an exhausted corporate drone working grueling overtime at a toxic black company. In that endless corporate hell, her one and only source of happiness was reading updates of her favorite web novel on her phone. The novel was a workplace romance fantasy where the gorgeous pink-haired female lead, Yuriana, got tangled up with 3 totally different handsome men. Yuriana Yuriana fell for the sub-male lead Seamus Finley through their fierce academic rivalry. Ah, yes, the classic enemies to lovers trope that keeps every romance webtoon reader hooked. Plus, she had a tense dynamic with the mastermind minister and a deep emotional salvation arc with the main male lead, Carlisle Lupesk. Back in her past life, she stretched her exhausted arms late at night, promising herself she'd quit her terrible job as soon as her current project ended. But on the exact day she finally handed in her resignation letter, dramatic sigh, tragedy struck. She literally died on her resignation day. Talk about god-tier bad luck. And to make matters worse, her reincarnated second life isn't looking much better either. Reincarnated as Layla, she crosses her arms in frustration, contemplating her miserable fate. She was an orphan commoner who fought through insane 1,500 to 1 odds to pass the civil service exam and become a palace official. But high-ranking title or not, she's still just a glorified government slave. She collapses onto her knees on the floor while Yuriana rushes over to ask if she's all right. To make her life even more absurd, her assigned teammates for her 3-month probation period turned out to be the absolute worst possible combination.
First up is Yuriana Croswell, the top graduate and the literal main heroine of the story, who comes complete with an actual glowing heavenly aura around her.
Second is Seamus Finley, the brooding sub-male lead who scored second place. Look at his edgy skull bracelet. This guy is trying so hard to project main character energy. And then there's Layla, who barely scraped by in last place, squeezed right between the web novel's main characters. Other palace workers start pointing and whispering among themselves as the group walks through the halls. They snicker about how 2 gorgeous, top-tier candidates were paired up with a random background extra like Layla. But while everyone else pity parties her, Layla gets a devilish grin on her face. She realizes that being on a team with the main leads is actually her ultimate ticket to freedom. Layla sighs softly as she tries to come to terms with her bizarre predicament. She tells herself that fighting against fate is completely pointless and she just needs to accept reality for what it is. Looking back at her upbringing as a poor orphan, getting a position inside the imperial palace was supposed to be her ultimate golden ticket. After all, for a commoner with 0 noble connections, a government job offered lifetime security. Standing right between the 2 star graduates, she tries her best to blend into the background. As long as she sticks close to the main protagonists, nobody will pay any attention to a random background extra like her. Clenching her fists with quiet determination, she sets a crystal clear goal for her corporate survival strategy. She doesn't want glory or promotions. All she wants is an assignment in the laziest, lowest effort department imaginable. She mentally reviews the imperial administrative layout, starting with the central department and the Magic Knight division. But at the very bottom lies the dreaded Black Magic Collection and Deterrence Department, otherwise known as the Black Spoon Division. That infamous department handles volatile dark artifacts and is notorious across the Empire for its horrific workload. In the original web novel, both Yuriana and Seamus were assigned there and suffered endless trauma while fighting dark magic beasts. Ha! Naturally, universe logic dictates that her very first weekly rotation sends her straight into the Black Spoon department. Unstable magical potions litter the tables, while a senior official literally crawls across the floor with weird purple mushrooms sprouting out of his back. Leela freaks out, realizing this hellhole is 10 times worse than anything described in the web novel. She gasps and covers her mouth in horror as that mushroom-covered official collapses right in front of her feet. Is this really a romance fantasy, or did she accidentally reincarnate into a workplace survival horror game? Suddenly, a sharp, angry voice echoes across the room, demanding to know why mistakes keep happening on basic reports. Layla flinches as the toxic office environment instantly triggers her modern corporate PTSD. The enraged senior shouts over the massive stacks of files, warning that a single misplaced digit in a dark magic report could get people killed. Talk about maximum stress on your very first day on the job. Unable to take another second of the psychological torture, one of the veteran workers throws his papers into the air and screams that he quits. He sprints toward the exit doors like his life depends on it, while another senior desperately reaches out from the floor begging to be taken along. Look at him breaking the sound barrier just to escape overtime. That is pure, unadulterated office desperation. With a dramatic shout, the second senior slams down his own resignation letter and bolts right out behind him. Layla's face turns into a complete blank sketch as she realizes both of their assigned mentors just abandoned ship. Staring at the empty doorway, A sudden realization strikes Layla as she tries to figure out who's left to run this disaster of a department. She remembers the original novel details about the department leader, Carlisle Lepesque, the brooding heir of the Northern Archduke. In the original story, Carlisle was described as an extreme workaholic who was secretly sweet and gentle toward the pink-haired female lead. But when the towering, dark-haired man steps up to her desk with piercing red eyes and an icy glare, the reality is terrifyingly different. He asks if they're the new rookies with a look that could freeze volcano lava. Layla sits at her desk with her head buried in her hands as a dark, heavy aura fills the entire room. Her intuition is screaming at her that something in this world is horribly broken. Resting her chin on her hands with a nervous drop of sweat, she watches Carlisle closely. Carlisle leans over her desk with an intense, unyielding gaze while Layla freezes completely, her feather quill hovering midair above her stacks of paperwork. A glittering side caption highlights the obvious truth that despite all the hectic office madness, these two are undeniably the official main leads of the story beyond the Golden Gate. Seriously? Look at him pulling off the classic wall slam desk lean. He's practically executing the ultimate romance fantasy male lead playbook. Stepping into the sunlit garden framed by blooming pink blossoms, Carlisle gently takes her hand into his own, softly confessing that he knows exactly what hardship she's been enduring all this time. Completely breaking his usual aloof demeanor, a deep crimson flush spreads across his cheeks as he clutches his vest tight against his chest, nervously stuttering out, flustered, embarrassed, that he genuinely wants to protect and help her with everything he's got. Wait a minute. Is our cold-hearted department head actually pouring his heart out right now? The artist absolutely cooked with this stunning shoujo lighting. When Yuriana tries to address him warmly as young Duke, Carlisle instantly cuts her off with a sharp glare. He coldly orders her never to call him by his noble title in the office. Marching past her desk, he reminds her that this is a professional workplace, not a high society ballroom. He scolds the main heroine like a ruthless middle management tyrant. Poor Yuriana clutches her typewriter ribbon with tears in her eyes, timidly apologizing for her mistake. Carlisle doesn't even bother accepting her apology as he glares with heavy dark circles under his exhausted red eyes. Look at those dark circles. This guy hasn't slept since the Imperial Empire was founded. Layla stares at him in sheer disbelief, realizing he is the absolute spitting image of her abusive manager from her past corporate job. She begins to panic, wondering if her former boss reincarnated right alongside her to ruin her second life too. Lone Crow flies past her head while her face devolves into a silly doodle expression. She shakes her head, realizing she's just letting her overthinking run wild. Clenching her fist, she resolves to stay out of the drama, let the main leads romance each other, and simply collect her paycheck like a true salary thief. But right as she makes her pledge, Carlisle's shadow looms over her desk. He calls her name with a deep, commanding voice, asking how much she actually understands about black magic artifacts. Layla calmly explains that black magic refers to destructive spells designed to harm others, and that their department is tasked with confiscating and destroying dangerous cursed relics. Carlisle nods approvingly, admitting that she actually knows her stuff, but cautions that handling dark magic requires immense magical energy that no rookie possesses. A dark, gloomy cloud surrounds him as he mutters bitterly about how higher-ups keep sending useless rookies who end up fleeing fieldwork. Layla sweats profusely beside him as the ambient edge fills the room. With a sharp tap, he drops a stack of administrative documents onto her desk and orders her to handle basic report distributions instead. Layla's eyes sparkle with inner joy as she celebrates getting stuck with harmless grunt work. For a former corporate veteran, filing papers and making copies is literally a paid vacation. A sharp glint flashes across her pink eyes as she prepares to flex her maxed-out office admin skills. As Carlisle turns to walk away, Layla raises her hand and calls out to him, asking for clarification on the assignment. He pauses with a heavy sigh, turning his tired red eyes back toward her to hear what issues she could possibly have already. Holding up the sample documents, she directly asks him which standardized font family should be used to maintain visual consistency across all official reports. Carlisle blinks in complete astonishment, entirely caught off guard by a rookie asking such a hyper-specific administrative formatting question. She politely shows him how one document uses decorative cursive script while another uses clean, readable print, asking him to explain the department's formatting guidelines. Carlisle sits back at his executive desk, lacing his fingers under his chin in deep thought. He internally admits that he had zero expectations for this newest batch of rookie recruits. He recalls how Minister Edgar Crow previously advised him to select a useful candidate from the incoming class with a flashy smile. In Carlisle's mind, Uriana was way too nervous and uptight, while Seamus was an arrogant noble who would quit the moment things got tough. And when he looked at Layla, all he saw was a low-ranked extra with completely dead, lifeless eyes like a 10-year corporate veteran. Dead eyes are the ultimate resume highlight in corporate fantasy worlds. Leaning on his desk with a heavy sigh, he had resigned himself to doing all the work alone after his senior subordinates ran away. But then he watches in shock as Layla leans over Uriana's desk, kindly pointing out how uneven line spacing makes official documents look messy. Layla gently guides the pink-haired heroine, explaining how keeping reports to a concise single page saves time for busy superiors. Uriana's face lights up with gratitude as she thanks Layla warmly, while Carlisle's heart suddenly gives a hard thud in his chest. Look at his cheeks turning bright pink! He's falling in love with her administrative competency. In Carlisle's eyes, a radiant golden light surrounds Layla as if she were a literal goddess descending from heaven, holding a stack of pristine paperwork. Sparkles pop around his desk as his heart thumps uncontrollably. He genuinely believes God sent an angelic savior to rescue him from his endless paperwork hell. And that, my friends, is how a workaholic falls in love. Carlisle sits silently at his massive wooden desk, carefully scanning through the stack of reports placed before him. The official Imperial memo at the top of his desk demands an immediate report on all black magic artifact incidents over the last 3 months by that very evening. Talk about a brutal Imperial deadline. Leela stands beside his desk, clutching a massive stack of paperwork, watching Carlisle sink deeper into sheer stress. Seeing his gloom, she internally jokes if she should just start an Imperial rebellion right then and there. Carlisle looks up from his desk with a gentle expression, gently apologizing for dropping such a sudden, massive workload onto her on her very first day. Looking out across the entire office, Carlisle officially announces to the room that an urgent, high-priority request just arrived from the Emperor. Layla instantly raises her eyebrow and asks if that means mandatory overtime. Carlisle's blunt answer is a cold yes. The second the word leaves his mouth, Layla's face drains of all emotion, devolving straight back into her iconic dead fish eyes. Look at Carlisle noticing those dead eyes returning. She is ready to quit on the spot. Holding out clean, pristine report sheets, Carlisle instructs the rookies to review every single dark magic incident file recorded over the last quarter. Uriana immediately bows and exclaims, "Yes, senior," while Layla steps forward holding her stack of files, asking if she should strictly limit her review to cases from the past 3 months. Layla holds up the documents with absolute professional poise, asking if he needs previous years or quarterly data for comparative analysis, or if he simply wants a raw total count. She continues asking if he would also like a comprehensive trend analysis included in the summary. Carlisle blinks in total shock, completely blown away by her insanely thorough corporate mindset. Layla notices his stunned expression and sheepishly adds that she just thought it would be helpful to clarify beforehand. Carlisle stammers slightly, clearing his throat and telling her to just organize the data while he draws the conclusions. But before turning away, Carlisle pauses and adds that she should go ahead and include the figures from the previous year and quarter as well. Fast forward to 4 p.m. where Layla casually types away at her desk. By 5:40 p.m., flames of hyper-efficient productivity erupt around her as her fingers move at lightning speed. Carlisle's chibi head is sweating in absolute awe of her maxed-out corporate skills. Golden afternoon sunlight filters through the grand library windows as Carlisle sits back and inspects the completed files. Carlisle turns through the pages in utter disbelief, muttering under his breath that the report is absolute perfection. With a soft sigh of relief, he announces that since the work is finished, everyone can head home early. Layla and Uriana happily clasp hands, celebrating their early departure. Meanwhile, Carlisle watches Layla through the office window glass, deeply pondering who Layla Lowell really is, considering she ranked dead last yet produces flawless executive work. Carlisle stares down at her file with intense focus, remembering that her official record lists her as a complete rookie with 0 prior work experience. Dark mystical imagery fills Carlisle's imagination, depicting Layla in dark cultist robes holding a Venetian mask alongside shadowy sorcerers and skeletons. He genuinely wonders if she's secretly an undercover operative or a high-level dark magic mastermind. Carlisle marches down the sunlit stone corridor, holding her file close, determined to find out the truth behind her mysterious competence. Carlisle strides over to his trusted aide seated behind a heavy wooden desk, calling out to him by name. Cedric looks up with a startled expression, wondering what could possibly be urgent enough to pull his boss away from his usual endless pile of work. Reaching across the polished desk, Carlisle rests his fingers on top of a confidential recruitment file. He fixes his gaze on his subordinate, admitting in a calm tone that he has a special request that requires immediate attention. Tapping his finger right against Layla's portrait on the administrative file, Carlisle's sharp red eyes narrow with serious curiosity. He orders Cedric to run a complete, thorough background check on her without delay. Wait a second. Is he suspicious that she's a hidden spy, or did her legendary formatting skills just make him fall head over heels for her office competency? The classic cold boss running a secret background investigation on the Extra is top-tier romance drama. Walking with purposeful strides through the Imperial hallway, Carlisle prepares to initiate a private investigation into her past. A handsome, silver-haired official enters holding 2 warm, steaming mugs, cheerfully inviting Carlisle to take a break and enjoy some tea while working. The silver-haired minister leans over Carlisle's desk, chuckling softly as he asks why Carlisle is stressing over paperwork when there's no immediate rush. A flashback panel reveals young Layla wearing a simple maid dress while carrying a heavy laundry basket outside a temple orphanage. Official records confirm she grew up as an orphan funded purely by temple subsidies. The silver-haired official remarks that temple subsidies are notoriously tiny, making it truly impressive that she managed to climb all the way into the imperial palace, even if she finished in last place. Close up on the silver-haired minister's piercing green eyes as a mischievous smirk grows across his face. The silver-haired official playfully pokes Carlisle's cheek with a sparkly heart effect, teasing that most importantly of all, Layla caught Carlisle's eye. Carlisle angrily slaps his hand away, barking at him to back off. Carlisle glares with sharp red eyes, trying to maintain his stoic composure despite his subordinate's relentless teasing. The silver-haired official crosses his arms, warning Carlisle that if he wants to recruit a rare talent like Layla, he better act fast before other department leaders snatch her up. Carlisle flinches in subtle panic. Carlisle turns his head thoughtfully, quietly asking which department the new batch of rookies is touring today. Cut to the next department rotation. Yuriana and Layla stand nervously inside a strict administrative office. A stern middle-aged senior named Allison Capress slams her hand on her desk, screaming, "Wrong!" Allison aggressively points her finger at pink-haired Yuriana, shouting how she can have zero common sense and asking if she honestly thinks high academy grades mean anything in the real world. Yuriana clutches her hands close, with tears pooling in her eyes, timidly crying that she's sorry and promises to work harder to learn. Allison slams her desk again, roaring, "Learn? Do you think this is some academy? Do you think I'm sitting here just to teach you?" Layla sighs internally from behind, realization sinking in that another toxic boss has appeared. Graphic summary of Allison throwing a dramatic rage tantrum. Layla's thoughts reveal that while this protocol department has less raw paperwork, it carries a massive boss risk, featuring the novel's original tyrant psycho, Allison Capress. A dark, blood-stained flashback depicts the Mad Emperor standing over the slain body of the Saintess with a dripping blade. A cracked imperial crown disintegrates inside a reddish-black aura, explaining how the imperial family's authority hit absolute rock bottom following the bloody Saintess assassination. Dust-covered storage boxes, cobwebs, and mice chewing through discarded files highlight how the imperial protocol team was reduced to a filthy, neglected shell, barely keeping up appearances. Allison barks a sharp command, pointing toward the archive hallway and shouting for Yuriana to follow her immediately. Yuriana flees the room in tears, covering her face, while Layla angrily pops up from her typewriter desk, fuming over how this manager takes his personal stress out on an innocent rookie. Layla narrows her pink eyes in confusion, wondering why that guy sitting right next to her isn't getting yelled at whatsoever. Close up on Seamus sitting casually at his desk, wearing an unbuttoned dress shirt with a silver skull bracelet, completely ignored by the tyrant boss. Layla smirks sarcastically, realizing that just because Seamus's father is the powerful magic tower master, the boss lets his untidy dress code slide completely. Talk about blatant workplace nepotism. Unable to hold back her corporate discipline any longer, Layla suddenly turns and points her finger directly at Seamus, commanding him sharply to button up his collar. Chibi graphic of Layla sweating profusely, explaining that as official members of the Imperial Protocol team, his unbuttoned uniform has been driving her organized corporate brain completely insane. Seamus tilts his head back in total defeat, admitting that if anyone on the Imperial Protocol team walks around looking like a total mess, nobody will respect royal decorum. He reluctantly agrees that she made a fair point. Chibi Layla stays on his case, ordering him to put on a tie too while he's at it. But Seamus pouts, complaining that he physically can't stand wearing anything tight around his neck, while Layla demands he get rid of that tacky skull bracelet immediately. Seamus holds up his wrist, defensively explaining that his skull bracelet is actually a rare functional magic artifact. Hearing his endless excuses, Layla covers her face and screams in total exhaustion over his relentless talking. Close up on Seamus's smirking face as his inner thoughts ring out. He genuinely wonders if just because someone is the boss, they automatically get the right to treat their subordinates like an emotional trash can. Man, corporate life is brutal no matter what fantasy realm you get reincarnated into. Seamus lowers his voice, casually remarking that Layla seems unusually emotional and worked up today. Layla suddenly freezes right in her tracks as his words hit home. Quickly composing herself, Layla touches her face and awkwardly announces that she's gonna head out to find Yuriana. Close up on her shoes as she marches down the quiet stone hallway. She sighs to herself, realizing that deep down inside, that grape-headed guy actually had a point. A dark memory panel shows the original novel's timeline, revealing that Layla Lowell was originally supposed to be the main victim of severe workplace harassment by the toxic senior boss. Chibi Layla sweats with immense corporate guilt. She realizes that because she used her former Korean office survival skills to laugh off the boss's abuse, the tyrant simply shifted her target onto poor innocent Yuriana instead. Layla pushes open a heavy oak door, only to run straight into Carlisle standing on the other side. Dramatic close-up on Carlisle's handsome features under the warm hallway light. Layla gasps slightly, asking what Senior Lepesque is doing here. Carlisle stands tall before her in his pristine dark uniform. Layla asks what brings him all the way to this wing, but Carlisle stoically claims he doesn't have any specific business here. Pointing her finger down the corridor, chuckles Chibi Layla helpfully informs him that if he's looking for Yuriana, she ran off toward the courtyard, completely dissolved in tears. Layla clutches her head in deep distress, internally losing her mind over how ridiculous this whole setup is. Seriously, why is the main story falling apart like this? Carlisle nonchalantly rubs the back of his neck, brushing it off by saying the new recruits won't end up on the protocol team anyway. He cold-heartedly adds that they should be able to endure a small trial like this if they want to work in the palace. Layla's face goes completely dark in disbelief. Noticing her deathly quiet expression, Carlisle turns his sharp red gaze back toward her, stating that she looks like she has something heavily weighing on her mind. Shadows loom behind Carlisle as his cold tone deepens, instructing her that if she has something to say to his face, she better go ahead and say it right now. Stepping closer to him with absolute conviction, Layla boldly tells him that hardships do not make people stronger. Spectral fingers pointing accusingly in her imagination recall her past corporate life, as Layla cold-headedly declares that unjust hardships only drive people insane, especially when those struggles are deliberately inflicted by someone else. Talk about dropping a truth bomb on a noble. Without waiting for his response, Layla politely bows her head and stiffly announces that she will take her leave. Layla walks away as her internal thoughts mock Carlisle mercilessly. In the original novel, he was portrayed as this cool, reliable senior hero, but in reality, deadpan, he's just a burnt-out corporate slave, forcing his suffering onto everyone else. As Layla navigates the quiet palace corridors, sniffles soft sniffling echoes from behind a pillar. She pauses, realizing someone is crying nearby. Peeking around the stone archway, gasp! Layla's eyes widen in absolute horror as she spots Allison Capress towering over pink-haired Yuriana, viciously taunting her that crying won't fix anything. Sarcasm, and claiming she despises pretty faces like hers. Allison keeps tearing into her without mercy, accusing Yuriana of joining the Imperial service just to bag a rich husband and acting weak the second real work starts. Poor Yuriana desperately wipes her flowing tears. Yuriana clutches her hands tightly, her voice trembling as she tearfully tells her boss that his harsh accusations were completely disrespectful. Allison recoils in shock, completely taken aback that a timid rookie actually dared to stand up for herself. Tucking herself behind the wall, Layla pumps her fist in pure excitement, privately rooting for Yuriana to demolish that toxic manager once and for all. Go get her, girl! Allison quickly regains her composure, sneering mockingly as she attacks Yuriana's lack of a proper noble upbringing. Allison cruelly brings up Yuriana's painful past, asking if she honestly thinks she can avenge her parents who were killed by black magic. She nastily adds that Lord Lupesque has zero intention of ever hiring someone like her anyway. Unable to sit back and watch this toxic verbal assault any longer, Layla boldly steps out into the open, shouting Team Leader Capress's name at the top of her lungs. Layla aggressively pokes Allison's back, hurriedly lying through her teeth that Senior Lupesk is urgently searching for her right now. Layla smiles cunningly, thinking she successfully tricked the boss into leaving so she can comfort Yuriana in peace. But suddenly, a thick, suffocating dark aura creeps up around him. Yuriana stands violently trembling as swirling black smoke erupts from her body. In a raspy, panicked voice, she weakly gasps for Layla to stay away. The pitch-black fog aggressively wraps around Yuriana's arms like demonic tendrils. Yuriana screams in sheer agony, begging Layla to get back. Layla drops her jaw in pure shock as violent dark magic surges across the balcony. Yuriana desperately clutches her arms as dark shadow flames devour her uniform, pleading with every drop of her strength for Layla to run far away. Layla's eyes go wide with total terror as she realizes that Yuriana is undergoing a full black magic berserk transformation right in front of her. Dark magic explodes into the sky. Layla screams internally, realizing that this terrifying berserk event never happened in the original novel's timeline. The butterfly effect is completely wrecking the story. Cracks shatter outward across the stone floor like a spiderweb as the raw, corrupted energy ripples through the air. Leela spins around frantically, trying to figure out how to escape the deadly shockwave. But out of nowhere, Allison Capress steps right behind Layla with dark, mind-controlled, empty eyes, raising both hands to strike. With a cruel, heavy impact, Allison violently shoves Layla directly into the erupting black magic vortex. Layla loses her footing entirely, falling backward off the balcony edge into the abyss of black flames. Close up on Layla's terrified face as she plummets. Chibi Layla cries out in absolute outrage that in her previous life she died in a random car accident, and now she's gonna die because of her psycho boss again. Talk about terrible luck. The dark magic violently detonates across the entire palace courtyard with a massive roar. Squeezing her eyes shut, Layla waits for the lethal impact, but suddenly feels a blinding golden glow wrap around her body. She slowly opens one eye in complete bewilderment. Out of nowhere, Carlisle swoops through the dark flames like an absolute savior, catching Layla securely in his arms right before the dark energy can tear her apart. What an insanely clutch rescue. Still cradling Layla tightly after pulling her back from the ledge, Carlisle looks out toward the dark corruption and firmly instructs her to cover her ears. Without hesitation, Carlisle pulls the trigger and blasts a glowing shot right toward the dark wall of energy. Layla crouches low, tightly pressing her hands over her ears just like he commanded. Yuriana staggers back inside the dark fog, groaning weakly as the shadow energy violently swirls around her pink hair. Chibi Layla gapes in utter disbelief. Wait, did this fantasy nobleman just whip out a literal firearm? Leela panics internally, staring at the revolver in Carlisle's hand. I mean, seriously, since when did this romance webtoon suddenly switch genres into an action thriller? This situation is getting totally out of control. Carlisle narrows his eyes as the oppressive aura intensifies. He realizes that if Yuriana goes completely berserk, everyone inside the Imperial Palace will get caught in the blast. Suddenly, Layla's eyes lock onto something glowing through the dark smoke. Pointing urgently down the balcony, Layla shouts at Carlisle to look over there. Carlisle tries to push her back to safety, but Layla insists that there's something shining right on Yuriana's chest. Hovering right over Yuriana's heart, a dark crescent-shaped crystal pulses brightly through her uniform. A dark energy core is radiating corrupted mana right near Yuriana's chest. Layla quickly recalls her webtoon knowledge. A black magic core is a dense mass of mana that amplifies human emotions to extreme levels. In the original storyline, the male lead only saw this core after the magic was dispelled. So why on earth is it visible right now? Layla clings to Carlisle's arm, urgently suggesting that if they touch and shock the core, they might be able to stop Yuriana's rampage right now. Carlisle glances down at her in confusion, admitting that he can't see any core through the thick shadow smoke. Realizing Layla is the only one who can see it, Carlisle lowers his voice and asks if she can grab the core if he creates an opening for her. Looking down at her with intense red eyes, Carlisle admits it's extremely dangerous, but it might be their only shot to save everyone in the palace. Man, talk about placing the fate of the Empire on a corporate intern's shoulders. Chibi Layla screams in total inner agony. Seriously? Don't force an ordinary office worker to pull off dangerous superhero stunts. Squeezing back her tears, Layla takes a deep breath and nods bravely, agreeing to give it her absolute best shot. Firing another shot to draw Yuriana's attention, Carlisle shouts for Layla to move now. Layla bolts forward with everything she's got. Sprinting straight into the terrifying dark aura, Layla mentally loses her mind, This wild life or death mission was definitely not on her career roadmap. Pushing past the roaring shadows, Layla reaches out with her bare hand and grabs the glowing crescent crystal directly off Yuriana's chest. Squeezing her eyes shut as searing heat burns through her skin, Layla grits her teeth and pulls with all her strength. With a violent burst of light, the corrupted black flames shatter and dissolve into thin air as Layla rips the core away. Layla holds the purified crystal firmly in her fist, completely unharmed as the last wisps of dark smoke disappear. Without the dark energy keeping her upright, Yuriana stumbles forward, completely drained of strength. Layla drops to her knees, panting heavily while catching her breath. Yuriana collapses onto the cold stone floor, completely unconscious. Layla immediately kneels beside her, gasping and asking if she's all right. Gently placing her hand near Yuriana's face, Layla exhales in deep relief, confirming that she's still breathing stably. Carlisle walks over with heavy, calm steps, ominously calling out Layla's name from behind. Looking down at her with a mix of surprise and suspicion, Carlisle directly asks how she was able to see the magic core when no one else could. Layla awkwardly turns her head away, sweating bullets as she tries to think of a believable excuse on the spot. Carlisle stands tall over her on the sunlit terrace, waiting silently for an answer. Honestly, the visual contrast between the stoic senior knight and the exhausted intern sitting on the floor here is peak comedy. Scene shifts. Following the terrifying Berserk incident, all the new recruits were placed on immediate home leave, except for Layla and Seamus. Sitting at the head of the long wooden table, Prime Minister Luella Halifax speaks in a grave tone, apologizing that they have to gather under such unfortunate circumstances. Theodore Wiswis, the head of the Magic Medicine Research Lab, steps forward, reporting that Yuriana has no physical injuries but urgently requires psychological recovery. Chibi Layla glances nervously at the shadowy silhouettes of the Imperial ministers. She sweats in total corporate dread, wondering why low-level interns at the bottom of the food chain are trapped in a high-level government tribunal. Theodore continues, stating that the psychological pressure Yuriana faced in the protocol team was immense. Hearing this, team leader Allison Capress violently slams her hands on the table, yelling back in defense. Glaring furiously at the committee, Capress shouts that she did nothing wrong and was simply teaching the rookie basic palace decorum. Pointing to a past image of tearful Yuriana, Capress nastily claims the recruit was emotionally unstable from day one. She sneers that Yuriana harbored so much spite that she allowed black magic to consume her just over a minor scolding. Talk about toxic bosses blaming the victim. Layla's eyes narrow into sharp glare lines as a vein pops on her forehead. She internally curses out that vile manager with pure hatred. To make matters worse, several elderly noble ministers mod along, agreeing that Capress actually makes a solid point. Layla gapes in utter disbelief. Whispering among themselves, the corrupt nobles, disgusted chuckle, express disappointment, questioning how someone who ranked top of her class could break so easily. They go even further, baselessly accusing Yuriana of cheating on her mental evaluation or secretly practicing black magic all along. Layla boils with rage, internally screaming at those useless old fogies. Clenching her teeth, Layla worries silently. Without Yuriana present or hard physical proof, how can they possibly hold Capress accountable for her severe workplace abuse? Leaning in close beside her, Seamus lowers his voice, telling Layla to hold on because Capress actually committed a second, far more serious crime. Seamus adds that Carlisle Lupesque is standing right behind them as a primary witness. Right on cue, a handsome silver-haired official enters the Grand Hall alongside Carlisle, casually wiping a shining object with a white cloth. He smoothly apologizes for being late, explaining he was verifying their findings. Chibi Layla's eyes widen in absolute surprise as she recognizes the high-ranking investigator. Holding up the pristine white handkerchief, the silver-haired official reveals the purified crescent magic core crystal for the entire room to see. He presents the crucial black magic artifact directly to the shock of Capress and the tribunal ministers, completely turning the tables. Now that's what I call an epic courtroom dramatic reveal. Layla's stomach drops into a total freefall as her eyes widen in sheer horror. Standing right beside Carlisle isn't just some high-ranking investigator, it's the single most dangerous person in the entire world. That smooth, silver-haired official casually wiping off the purified magic crystal is none other than Edgar Crow, the primary villain and ultimate mastermind of the original webtoon story. Man, talk about jumping straight out of the frying pan and directly into a dragon's mouth. Sweating profusely as her entire lie crumbles, Team Leader Caprice slams her hand on the desk, loudly protesting that showing up unannounced with random reports is complete nonsense. Before Caprice can deflect any further, Seamus calmly steps up right next to Layla, raising his hand high to declare that he possesses direct, undeniable evidence as well. Remaining completely unbothered by her screaming, Seamus keeps his hand raised high, repeating firmly that his proof will end this debate once and for all. Prime Minister Luella Halifax adjusts her cold gaze, turning toward the quiet recruit to demand what exact evidence he could possibly have gathered. Acing the entire tribunal without a single flinch, Seamus directly refutes Capressa's story, stating that Yuriana was never mentally unstable when she first joined the department. He raises his right arm, drawing everyone's attention toward an ornate silver bracelet adorned with detailed skull charms glowing faintly around his wrist. Tapping the small skull artifact with a sharp mechanical click, Seamus reveals that his family heirloom doubles as a high-grade magic recording device. Suddenly, Capressa's harsh voice echoes loudly through the grand hall, broadcasting her vicious insults from their first day on the job. Chibi Layla gapes in shock. This quiet intern was literally wiretapping his boss the whole time. The recording continues blaring through the room, capturing Capress barking disgusting personal insults about recruits lacking shame just because they don't have parents. Capress stands completely frozen as her own toxic words destroy her credibility. Layla's jaw hits the floor as she realizes with absolute panic that if the device recorded everything from that afternoon, whispers, her own voice is preserved on that crystal too. The surrounding noble ministers murmur in disgust, shaking their heads in total disapproval after hearing such appalling workplace abuse with their own ears. Suddenly, the recording plays Leela's snappy corporate comeback from that day, loudly broadcasting her saying that parent or no parent, everyone's just here to earn a paycheck. Hearing this, Edgar Crow completely loses his composure, bursting into a muffled fit of laughter. Edgar quickly covers his mouth in chibi fashion, softly apologizing for his sudden outburst, while Capress boils with pure, explosive rage. Seriously? Imagine getting publicly roasted in an imperial court by your own audio recording. Composing himself with a charming smile, Edgar smoothly announces that the tribunal has heard more than enough to establish the truth. Seeing her golden opportunity, Layla eagerly raises her hand, declaring that she's ready to drive the final nail into Capress's proverbial coffin. Flashback memories surface as Layla testifies under oath, detailing how Capress subjected the new recruits to relentless verbal abuse, scoffs, from the very second they stepped into the office. Layla puffs out her chest, proudly explaining to Prime Minister Lolella that she personally survived the toxicity by simply letting Capress's insults go in one ear and right out the other. Capress glares at her with bloodshot eyes, quivering in rage that an intern dares to act so smugly superior in front of the Empire's top leaders. Layla's tone turns serious, lowers voice, as she contrasts her experience with Yuriana's, pointing out that unlike her, Yuriana took every single abusive insult to heart while trying desperately to improve. Dark visual tendrils wrap around Yuriana's shadowed silhouette, showing how constant managerial cruelty shattered her spirit and left her vulnerable to dark magic corruption. Clasping her hands over her heart, Layla earnestly requests the High Court to launch a thorough investigation into the matter to ensure justice for Yuriana. Prime Minister Luella rests her chin on her hands, falling into a heavy, contemplative silence as she ponders the gravity of the testimony. Leaning forward with an intensely imposing aura, Luella calls out Capress's name with icy sharpness, causing the arrogant manager to jump in sheer fright. Zero hesitation, Luella strictly commands the immediate summoning of the Imperial Magic Knight Department. Luella delivers the crushing verdict, officially placing Capress under arrest for severe workplace abuse and the attempted murder of an official against Layla. Now that's what I call sweet, sweet corporate justice. Clad in pristine white uniforms, two heavily armed magic knights march into the room with crisp, authoritative strides. Capress backs away in total panic, pleading that they can't do this to her. Ignoring her pathetic protests, the knights snap heavy iron cuffs tightly around Capress's wrists. Dragging her out of the room, the knights sternly order Capress to remain quiet while she screams at the top of her lungs, wailing about her 20 years of imperial service. As she's dragged past the doorway, Capress shrieks a terrifying threat, swearing that Layla will pay dearly for this. Layla merely smirks with a satisfied expression, internally reflecting that arrogant bullies remain cowardly to the strong and cruel to the weak until the very end. Luella's eyes darken as she looks down at the official documents, realizing that if this dark magic incident connects to the recent kidnapping cases, black mages are actively infiltrating the Imperial Palace itself. Looking up with fierce determination, Luella orders her top officials to hunt down and apprehend the true mastermind behind these dark mages without delay. Standing nearby, Edgar Crow turns his head with a cheerfully dazzling angelic smile, bowing respectfully to acknowledge the Prime Minister's orders. Following behind Luella and Edgar as they exit down the grand marble corridor, Layla quietly observes their interactions from a safe distance. Layla rubs her chin in deep thought, uneasy chuckle, feeling a creeping sense of unease that her testimony might have accidentally handed the main villain exactly what he wanted. Exhaling softly, sigh, Layla shakes off her anxiety, convincing herself that high-level political conspiracies are way above an intern's pay grade anyway. Suddenly, a long arm shoots out of nowhere, violently slamming against the wall right beside Layla's face. Layla freezes in place as Edgar Crow corners her in a dramatic kabadon, whispering her full name in a smooth velvet tone. Framed by floating flowers and sparkling light, Edgar leans in absurdly close, radiating peak romance webtoon male lead energy. He gazes down at her with mysterious green eyes, studying her startled face with an intensely charming smirk. Layla's heart skips a beat as she struggles to process why the final boss of the story is hit-flooring her in an empty hallway. Instantly snapping back to reality, Chibi Layla drops into an aggressive 90-degree corporate bow, loudly thanking Minister Crow for his help earlier. Man, that professional intern survival reflex is truly unmatched. Edgar lets out a delighted laugh, teasingly admitting he heard she ripped out the magic core barehanded and that he intentionally tested her reactions during the tribunal to see if she'd break under pressure. Chibi Layla boils with inner rage, cursing out the smug jerk in her mind. Touching his chin with a sharp, calculating gaze, Edgar's smirk widens as he admires her incredible composure. Reaching forward, Edgar firmly places his hand on Layla's shoulder, smoothly issuing a direct mandate that she must transfer into his Black Spoon department immediately. Layla completely turns to stone, staring at him in utter horror as her peaceful corporate life crumbles into tiny dust particles around her background. As the shimmering magic crystal floats in her mind, Layla realizes the horrifying truth. Her rare ability to see black magic cores has officially dragged her into the very center of the mastermind's dangerous web. Edgar casually offers Layla a spot, beaming with a pleasant chuckle as he assures her that her unique talent makes her an absolute perfect match for his Black Spoon department. Without missing a beat, Layla raises her hand in a rock-hard gesture of absolute refusal, cutting him off before he can even finish his sentence. Edgar blinks in mild shock, utterly bewildered that anyone in the Empire would turn down a direct invite from a high-ranking minister, as he softly asks why. Completely ignoring the final boss, Layla turns her back on him and waves enthusiastically toward Chief Theodore, shouting loudly that there's a totally different department she wants to apply to instead. Theodore turns around in surprise, adjusting his glasses as he hears his name called down the quiet corridor. Scuttling over to Theodore like her life depends on it, Layla hurriedly asks if he has a moment to discuss next week's apprenticeship in the Magic Herb Room. Naturally, Theodore smiles warmly and agrees without hesitation. Glancing over her shoulder with cold sweat dripping down her face, Layla internally panics while keeping up her friendly act. Her peaceful future flashes before her eyes, a glorious dream of being a lazy, highly paid salary thief crumbling into a million shattered pieces. Seriously, who knew surviving a fantasy world meant defending your right to do the absolute minimum work possible? Left standing alone in the hallway, Edgar rests his hand against his chin, falling into a quiet, analytical trance. Muttering softly to himself, Edgar ponders what on earth a salary thief even means, wondering if Layla hates black magic or if she genuinely despises his presence. Right on cue, Lupesque steps up from behind to address his superior. Lupesque quietly inquires whether Edgar had the chance to speak with Miss Lowell about her future placement, to which Edgar casually confirms that he did. Edgar delivers the crushing news that Layla has zero intention of joining their department, causing a dramatic bolt of shock to strike down on Lupesque. To make matters hilariously worse, Edgar adds that she already picked her dream department. Lupesque droops instantly like a disappointed puppy, complete with visual floppy ears and a sagging tail. Look at him. This guy looks like he just got told his favorite dog park is closed forever. Edgar narrows his emerald eyes with a scheming smirk, letting out a subtle sigh as an idea forms in his mind. Turning back toward his subordinate, Edgar teasingly notes that Lupesque clearly failed to make a good first impression as her mentor. Lupesk gasps in utter panic, flustered beyond belief at the accusation. Flashback memories swirl back into Lupesk's head, remembering how he stood over Layla with intensely intimidating glare while she cowered in front of him. Dropping into full chibi panic, Lupesk stammers that he was only trying to comfort her from his heart. Edgar covers his smile, finding his assistant's complete lack of social skills thoroughly amusing. Straightening his posture, Lupesk insists with deadly seriousness that they must immediately pull her into their special branch for further observation. Asking what his next move will be, Lupesk watches as Edgar produces the glowing magic crystal core, tossing it gently between his fingers. Edgar gazes at the shimmering core with a dangerously handsome smirk, ominously declaring that if gentle persuasion won't work, he'll just have to use a little force. Clutching the purified artifact tight within his grip, the ultimate villain makes it crystal clear that Layla won't be escaping his clutches so easily. Talk about a boss who completely refuses to accept a decline on a job offer. Chief Theodore gently offers the cup to Layla, asking if she's finally gotten accustomed to life within the Imperial Palace grounds. Layla beams like a radiant sunflower, clasping her hands together as she happily declares that it's all thanks to his incredible guidance. Theodore holds a small potted plant in his arms, smiling with the pure, untainted warmth of an absolute saint. Pushing up her glasses with a dramatic anime lens flare, Layla internally cheers because her probationary department for the week is none other than the Magic Medicine Research Lab. An official evaluation card pops up outlining her dream workplace criteria. Number 1, extremely kind and diligent superiors. Number 2, a super light workload all year round. And number 3, an insanely generous department budget overflowing with gold coins. Man, she literally found the holy grail of corporate slacking. Taking a tear of profound sorrow, Layla sighs that she's deeply saddened her temporary trial period here is coming to an end. Slamming her hands onto the table with intense theatrical passion, Layla prepares to deliver the most shameless corporate suck-up speech in history. Pouring on the dramatic praise, Layla rambles about how the Magic Medicine Lab is a noble sanctuary dedicated to citizen health, and even though she lacks skills, she wants to devote her entire life to serving under him. Theodore simply chuckles, telling her to relax and take a break. Looking at her with genuine affection, Theodore warmly states that he would absolutely love for her to join their lab permanently. Layla gasps in sheer triumph, her eyes sparkling with full-blown optimism as her plan to secure an easy paycheck comes together. Shifting back to business, Theodore mentions that she was planning to visit Miss Croswell at the medical wing alongside Mr. Finley today. Bowing slightly, Theodore kindly instructs her to head out early since the Palace Hospital has strict visiting hours, reassuring her that he already cleared it with Finley. Layla bows down in deep gratitude, thanking him profusely. Walking out into the hallway, Layla smiles blissfully to herself, double-checking that she heard her boss grant her permission for an early clock out. Grinning with sinister joy while dark corporate aura swirls around her, Layla celebrates getting off work early, while Seamus stands behind her, watching her weird behavior in total silence. Seamus tilts his head in genuine confusion, asking why on earth she's in such a ridiculously good mood. Swinging the exit door open with a cheery skip in her step, Layla brightly claims that it's simply because the weather outside is so lovely today. Outside, pitch black storm clouds cover the sky as a jagged bolt of lightning strikes with a deafening crash. Chibi Seamus dryly points out that it's literally storming, to which Chibi Layla hilariously copes by saying at least she won't get sunburned. Seriously, her toxic positivity in the face of literal thunder is unmatched. Seamus's voice drops into an intense whisper, asking if she has something important to tell him about what happened earlier. Layla's smile instantly stiffens as sweat drips down her cheek. Internally groaning that he's grilling her again, Layla holds her temples while Seamus steps up close, demanding to know how she managed to pull off that magic core feat. Dropping into a chibi meltdown, Layla covers her head and screams at the top of her lungs that she genuinely has no idea. Turning back around with an awkward, nervous smile, Layla attempts to divert the uncomfortable topic. Flattering him frantically, Layla stammers that she had no idea his silver bracelet was such a high-grade magic device, praising him as a top-tier male lead candidate who always saves the day. Seamus blinks in confusion at the weird phrase male lead candidate, but before he can press her any further, Layla loudly interrupts that they've finally arrived at the hospital room. Standing right outside the heavy wooden doors, Layla turns to Seamus with a serious reminder, whispering, warning him that Yuriana needs absolute quiet and rest. Sliding the grand hospital door open with a polite greeting, Layla steps inside to check on her sick colleague. The moment Layla looks into the room, her jaw drops as her eyes widen in total, unadulterated astonishment. Resting on the bed is Yuriana, but standing right beside her are Carlisle and Edgar Crow. Layla's heart completely stops as she screams internally, "Why on earth are the main male leads and the ultimate final boss hanging out together in a sick ward?" Talk about walking directly into an endgame boss encounter. Resting quietly in her hospital bed, Yuriana gazes up at her visitors with a soft, deeply relieved smile. Edgar steps forward with a pleasant grin, explaining that Minister Crow officially cleared them of all charges, confirming Team Leader Capres's abusive misconduct was formally recognized thanks to Layla and Seamus. Yuriana lets out a quiet breath, explaining that while she managed to avoid punishment for going berserk, a heavy concern still lingers on her mind. Her gentle smile fades away as her eyes drop downward in hesitation, clearly wrestling with a major life decision. Dropping a massive bombshell, Yuriana turns to Layla and announces that she's officially giving up on applying to the elite Black Spoon department. Layla stands completely frozen in absolute shock. "What?" Layla screams internally, her mind instantly short-circuiting as the original webtoon plot completely derails right before her eyes. Yuriana confesses that someone mentally fragile shouldn't even be in a high-risk unit. Terrified she'll drag everyone into danger, Layla internally shrieks in panic, begging her not to say such weakness out loud. I mean, showing weakness right in front of the final boss like Mastermind Edgar is top-tier self-sabotage. Grabbing Yuriana's sleeves in a desperate rush, Layla shouts for her to listen very carefully. Layla locks eyes with the original heroine, her gaze burning with deadly intensity as she prepares to preach her core life philosophy. Shaking her head, Layla passionately preaches that unless someone aims to be a workaholic high official, quitting perfectionism is the secret to living a long, peaceful corporate life. A heavy hand gently rests on Layla's shoulder as Seamus suddenly chimes in, agreeing that Lowell actually raises a valid point. Turning her head in surprise, Layla blinks as Seamus steps up right behind her to back up her motivational slacker speech. Seamus points out that while the Black Spoon unit is brutally demanding, struggling through difficult tasks will naturally make anyone stronger over time. Yuriana's eyes sparkle with profound emotion, gasp, touched to her very core by their unexpected words of encouragement. Clasping her hands together, Layla internally cheers for Seamus, praising the male lead for finally doing something useful, until Seamus casually adds that Layla herself is built completely different. Layla's enthusiastic expression instantly freezes as a terrible gut feeling tells her she just walked straight into an inescapable trap. Edgar smirks smoothly, agreeing with Seamus's observation without missing a single beat. Edgar praises Layla's calm, rational mindset for effortlessly reassuring her panicked colleague, while chibi Layla stands in the background muttering why on earth she suddenly feels like crying. Look at her. She literally talked herself straight into a promotion she spent all week trying to avoid. Smirking with closed eyes, Edgar proudly declares that Layla possesses the exact mindset needed to survive and thrive in his special branch. Sweat dripping down her pale face, Layla turns back toward Yuriana in utter desperation, whispering silently, begging the original female lead to stick to her intended story path. Yuriana simply smiles like an untainted angel, completely inspired to join the department now thanks to Layla's passionate speech. Pivoting in pure panic, Layla turns toward Finley, anxiously asking what his placement plans are. Internally screaming at the top of her lungs, Layla desperately prays for Finley to follow the heroine and keep the main storyline intact. Staring down at her with intense suspicion, Finley coolly replies that he needs to stay close to uncover whatever secrets Layla is hiding. A dramatic split panel highlights the two factions, Yuriana and Finley standing together on the left, while Seamus and Edgar smirk side by side on the right. Visual cracks shatter the air as Layla falls into a full-blown meltdown, screaming why everyone's intense stares make it feel like she's already locked into the dangerous Black Spoon department. Talk about a backfire of legendary proportions. Edgar delivers the final blow, smoothly proposing that they move the rest of their conversation directly over to the Black Spoon department office. Towering beside her with an unshakable villain presence, Edgar tilts his head with a subtle smirk, asking if Miss Lowell has any objections. Scene cuts to the outer palace towers where torrential rain pours down relentlessly through the pitch-black night. Inside the warm, aromatic magic medicine lab, Chief Theodore quiets down while tending to his plants as a voice echoes near the doorway. Turning around with a potted plant cradled softly in his arms, Theodore adjusts his glasses in surprise upon realizing Lord Crow has arrived. Standing right next to Edgar is Layla, drooping like a withered dandelion with zero soul left in her body. Theodore kindly asks if Layla forgot something after heading out for her visit, causing Layla's eyes to sparkle with frantic hope toward her savior boss.
Stepping forward, Edgar casually explains that he heard Ms. Lowell decided to apply to the Magic Medicine Research Lab, so he dropped by out of professional courtesy.
Gently pulling Layla closer by her shoulder, Edgar looks down at her with a chillingly handsome grin. Dropping an absolute bomb on the peaceful lab chief, Edgar declares his intention to immediately transfer Miss Lowell into the Black Spoon unit. Theodore's jaw drops in complete disbelief as he shouts out in pure indignation. Loudly protesting, Theodore holds his potted plant tight, shouting that her probationary trial week hasn't even concluded yet. Edgar casually admits that he knows it's overstepping authority. Looming over the room like a grandmaster moving a key piece on a giant chessboard, Edgar coolly states that the Prime Minister put him in sole charge of the Black Mage's case, and Layla's power is mandatory for the investigation. Narrowing his sharp emerald eyes with a dangerous smirk, Edgar ominously asks if Lord Wiswis understands the weight of imperial security matters. Man, pulling the Prime Minister's political authority card on a gentle herbalist is so ruthlessly manipulative. Theodore clenches his teeth in bitter, helpless silence, completely outmaneuvered by the High Minister's absolute power. Tears stream down Layla's face in literal waterfalls as she accepts her horrific reality. She is officially doomed. A hilarious mental depiction shows Layla dressed as a poor maiden plummeting into a dark void, screaming in agony as her last lifeline gets cut. Meanwhile, Edgar casually notes how convenient her immediate transfer is. Straightening his coat, Edgar turns away with a satisfied smile, announcing that it's time for them to take their leave. Left standing alone in his empty laboratory, Theodore watches their figures retreat down the long, quiet corridor. Ambient light reflects off Theodore's glasses as his usual warm, gentle expression completely vanishes into a cold, shadowy glare. Muttering softly under his breath with a surprisingly dark tone, Theodore whispers that this entire situation is turning extremely troublesome. Outside in the grand hallway, jagged bolts of lightning flash beyond the massive glass windows as Edgar glides smoothly ahead of his newest subordinate. Slumping into a total chibi ghost state with dark rain clouds hanging over her head, Layla mourns the tragic death of her cushy, highly paid slacker dream. Framed by a gorgeous backdrop of dark purple roses, Edgar glances over his shoulder with a dangerously attractive, arrogant, evil smirk, thinking to himself that this is what true power tastes like. What an absolute menace of a final boss. Layla's eyes bulge in pure disbelief as her brain completely stalls. Tripping over her own words, she frantically pats her hair down, desperately trying to restore an ounce of professional composure as she stammers out a nervous plea to the minister. Edgar maintains a cool, effortlessly polite demeanor, while Layla attempts to sell herself short, insisting she lacks any special talent that could possibly interest a high-ranking department. Edgar simply chuckles, noting how surprisingly humble she's acting. Crossing his arms behind her, Edgar casually drops that Seamus Lupesque praised her work ethic to high heaven. Layla freezes on the spot, her eyes widening in horror as she realizes her own coworker threw her under the bus. A vivid flashback flashes through her mind, showing her grinding through mountain loads of administrative paperwork. Is that why Layla shrieks internally, realizing her own relentless corporate efficiency came back to bite her right in the tail end? Glowing red with pure existential rage, Layla screams internally at the top of her lungs. Man, trying to hide your competent worker status in an imperial bureau is an impossible task. Trembling like a leaf before Edgar's intimidating presence, Layla stammers out excuses, claiming her sharp instincts were just luck built from growing up in an orphanage, or some wild adrenaline surge during a crisis.
Chibi Layla throws a full-blown violent temper tantrum in her head, begging this mastermind boss to just let her live a quiet slacker life. Meanwhile, Edgar rests his fingers on his chin, slyly calculating his next move. A close-up highlights Edgar's dark, amused smirk as he softly mutters under his breath, thoroughly enjoying every second of her helpless struggle. Framed by a sparkling background, Edgar gazes down at Layla, smoothly suggesting that her rare ability to perceive black magic core energy
might actually stem from a noble bloodline. Layla blinks in total confusion, echoing his words as Edgar turns to grasp the heavy brass door handle, inviting her inside to meet someone special. Swinging the majestic wooden doors wide open, Edgar presents a lavishly lit private study, stepping aside with grand grandeur as Layla peers inside. Dazzling divine light bursts forth as a handsome priest adorned in ceremonial white robes gently channels radiant holy energy between his hands, confirming that Layla undeniably possesses high-tier divine power. Layla's mind completely short-circuits as her face pales in absolute bewilderment. Since when on earth did her background extra character possess holy divine powers? Sitting across the desk, Priest Lumiere, Edgar Crow's trusted vassal, gently clasps Layla's hands in his own glowing palms, confirming her holy affinity while Layla internally shrieks in panic. Massaging her throbbing temples, Layla desperately tries to process the priest's theory, suggesting her divine dormant magic simply never awakened because she had no reason to use it in her mundane life. Clasping his hands together in ecstatic bliss, Lumiere proclaims her awakening an absolute miracle, turning to Seamus to ask if they can trace her true family lineage through her unique holy mana frequency. A breathtaking visual depicting a celestial maiden descending with radiant light illustrates Lumiere's explanation that high divine power is strictly inherited through ancient bloodlines. Honestly, watching the universe force a main character origin story onto a girl who just wants a nap is gold. Edgar's long fingers tap authoritatively on a formal parchment document lying on the desk, smoothly offering his congratulations to Miss Lowell, chuckling on her extraordinary heritage. Sweat dripping down her flustered cheeks, Layla stares down at the official document while clutching her quill, her stomach twisting into tight knots. Edgar and Seamus stand side by side like a pair of ridiculously handsome male leads, casting down an overwhelming aura of authority that leaves zero room for escape. Flipping through the pages, Layla internally questions why an extra like her suddenly gets burdened with epic holy powers, muttering whether the webtoon author completely lost their mind. Shaking like a leaf under their intense collective gazes, Layla points directly at the contract clauses, anxiously demanding Minister Crow explain what on earth she's reading. Slamming her hands on the table, Layla snaps in outrage, shouting why on earth the contract specifies a mandatory 3-year service period that she's never heard of in palace history. Edgar smirks smoothly, calmly explaining that because the Black Magic Department handles high-level national security, mandatory long-term contracts are standard protocol. Edgar folds his arms with a blinding, sparkling smile while dark, gloomy stress lines rain down on Chibi Layla. She realizes that if she signs this, she'll be buried in corporate work forever. Edgar's emerald eyes narrow into a sharp, captivating gaze as he calls her name in a low, resonant tone. Leaning down right beside her desk, Edgar warns her in a quiet whisper that if rival political factions discover her rare counter-magic abilities, target marks will immediately paint themselves on her back. Chibi visual graphics pop up showing a terrifying executioner waving massive butcher knives over a tied-up Layla. As Edgar casually warns, she can end up locked in a magic tower lab like a test rabbit. Layla's eyes widen in sheer horror, immediately reconsidering her stance as she realizes working in the Black Spoon unit is 10 times safer than becoming a mad scientist lab experiment. Edgar smoothly reassures her that for her absolute personal safety, he will personally guarantee this secret remains strictly classified. Priest Lumiere offers a gentle, reassuring nod and a polite smile, confirming that he too will take her secrets straight to his grave. Edgar tilts his head with an unreadable, subtle expression, softly adding that if she chooses to reject the offer and seek employment elsewhere, things could get complicated. Layla narrows her eyes, fiercely asking if he's threatening her. Edgar simply chuckles with an innocent smirk, calling it a mutually beneficial business proposal. Seriously, this guy plays high-stakes political blackmail like it's a casual game of checkers. Releasing a defeated sigh, dark mist swaths around Layla as she finally accepts her undeniable defeat, muttering that she'll sign the Imperial contract. With a trembling hand, Layla presses the quill against the parchment, her eyes welling with dramatic tears as she signs her life away into corporate servitude. Reviewing the fine print, Chibi Layla points out a strange mandatory clause requiring her to relocate into the Imperial Palace dormitories. Seamus steps up, explaining it's a non-negotiable security protocol. Resting his chin in his hand, Seamus thoughtfully notes that while Finley already stays on palace grounds, Layla is currently commuting all the way from her local orphanage. Layla sags her shoulders in resignation, agreeing that packing her belongings and moving into the palace dorms is her only realistic path forward.
As she prepares her paperwork, Layla catches a glimpse of Seamus out of the corner of her eye, noticing him hovering right beside her desk. Turning her head up, she blinks in confusion as Seamus lingers quietly with an unshakable, resolute expression. A magnificent full-body panel showcases Seamus standing bathed in radiant male lead aura, looking impossibly regal and noble. Layla points a shocked finger at him, her eyes bulging as a terrible realization dawns upon her mind. "Are you saying you're coming with me?" Layla screams internally, her voice echoing in pure shock as she realizes her senior intends to escort her personally. The golden sunset casts long, dramatic shadows across the cobblestone streets as Seamus walks tall beside Layla on her trip back. Layla continues staring at her senior in sheer disbelief, her jaw practically dropping onto the floor as they stroll down the quiet path. Meanwhile, at the cozy wooden orphanage building illuminated by the setting sun, soft voices ring out near the front porch. Sitting on the stone floor drawing cute doodles with white chalk, the young orphanage kids chatter among themselves, wondering if Layla is stuck working late overtime again. Suddenly, footsteps echo at the entrance gate as the children gasp, dropping their chalk to look up in pure excitement. Layla stands at the gate with a tender, gentle smile, stepping inside to greet the adorable little kids as they rush forward to welcome her home. Look at her sweet smile. Despite all the chaotic boss drama, her heart for these kids remains pure gold. Layla gently wraps her arms around the orphanage kids, her heart melting as she looks at their cheerful faces. Even before her past life memories kicked in, these sweet little angels felt like her real family. One of the energetic boys rushes up to showcase his new chalk drawing, eager for praise. But before she can even compliment his masterpiece, Director May's sharp voice pierces right through the porch air. Adjusting her glasses with a strict, unyielding glare, Director May scolds Layla for idling around when she's already late. Man, no matter what universe you reincarnate into, the boss of the house always finds a way to nag you. Looming over them with a dark, terrifying aura, Director May demands Layla immediately assist with bathing the children. She even warns Layla not to dare keep any of her earned salary for herself. Talk about an ultimate evil boss vibe. Sudden heavy footsteps crunch against the dusty floorboards, cutting Director May off as a deep, dignified voice calls out Layla's name. Framed by a sparkling floral backdrop, Seamus Lupesque thoughtfully inspects the broken garden flower beds, softly remarking that the damaged structures look far too dangerous for young kids. Director May gasps in total shock, her eyes bulging at the high-status noble standing in her front yard. Layla hastily introduces him as her senior mentor from the prestigious Lupesque ducal house. Layla internally shrieks, realizing Seamus insisted on tailing her all the way home like an overprotective bodyguard. Honestly, having a gorgeous duke follow you home just to do yard safety inspections is peak romance webtoon behavior. Quick to make an escape, Layla offers a polite bow, excusing herself to go pack her room while leaving her mentor and the director to chat. Seamus stands stoically as Layla dashes off into the house like a whirlwind. Meanwhile, Director May panics in chibi mode, desperately trying to figure out how to properly address a grand young lord. Seamus politely bows his head, apologizing for the delayed introduction and formally introducing himself as Carlisle Lupesque. He smoothly explains that since Layla will now be residing permanently at the Imperial Palace dorms, he wanted to personally visit and pay his formal respects. Director May lets out an impressed chuckle, her mind immediately spinning. Looking at Seamus up and down, Director May slyly chuckles, wondering how on earth a plain girl like Layla managed to catch the eye of such an extraordinarily handsome gentleman. You gotta love how quickly side characters start playing matchmaker. She cheekily remarks that while Layla looks average, she's so useful around the house that losing her will be a massive financial blow. Hearing her subtle hints, Seamus instantly catches on to her greedy motive. Without missing a beat, Chaby Seamus calmly promises to provide full financial grants and free labor to compensate for Layla's absence, leaving Director May clutching her hands in pure, joyful ecstasy. Glowing with satisfaction, Director May gushes about how thoughtful he is, casually adding that Layla has actually been quite a peculiar child since she first arrived at the orphanage. A gentle flashback shows a tiny basket left on the doorstep under a starry winter sky. Director May recalls how Layla was abandoned without a single sound on a freezing night. Look at that classic main character origin story trope. Every webtoon orphan turns out to be secret royalty. Seamus listens intently under the golden sunset light. Deep sigh, his red eyes narrowing as he processes every tiny detail about her past.
Director May explains that her basket contained a note with the name Layla, meaning Lady of the Night in an ancient lost language, proving her origin was far from ordinary. Turning his gaze toward young Henry, Seamus softly addresses the boy by name, probing deeper into Layla's personal history. Seriously? Watching a high-ranking Imperial officer interrogate a little kid for backstory intel is hilarious.
Director May's voice echoes in her mind, recalling how she was mysteriously dropped off in a basket as an infant without any clue about her biological parents.
Layla holds up an old dusty Manhwa, coughing as gray clouds billow around her face from years of neglect. Staring down at her old exam prep book, Layla snifflingly wipes her tears. She didn't grind through grueling civil service exams just to end up fighting dark mages in the death trap Black Spoon department. Talk about a terrible career turn. Clenching her jaw with newfound determination, Layla's eyes flash red as she realizes there's only one logical way out of this corporate nightmare. An illustrative visual of the elite founders highlights the core truth. The Black Spoon department was specifically created for one singular objective. A sinister cloaked villain channels glowing purple dark magic inside a dark room, illustrating the department's sole mission to eradicate dark magic abusers. Chibi Layla stands triumphantly beside a tied-up villain. She realizes that if they simply defeat the main villain faction, the Black Spoon unit will lose its purpose and be disbanded immediately. That galaxy brain loophole logic is unmatched. Raising her fist in victorious joy, Layla realizes that once the department goes under, her mandatory service contract becomes completely void, granting her ultimate slacker freedom. She calculates that if she just speeds through the story's main plot incidents, she can wrap up the webtoon's plot in record time. Achoo! Chibi Layla suddenly sneezes violently, her eyes watering like crazy as the thick layer of dust hits her sinuses hard. Coughing into her sleeve, Layla mutters that she needs to finish packing ASAP. Suddenly, the wooden door clicks open as young Henry pops his head inside, announcing his entrance. Hearing a mentor, Layla turns around with glowing red eyes overflowing with tears caused purely by the dust explosion. Henry drops his jaw in utter shock. Seeing his beloved sister's tear-streaked face, he assumes the handsome stranger downstairs broke her heart. Kneeling on the floor, little Henry fumes with fury, desperately asking if he should run downstairs and kick that shady noble out right now. Layla flusters in panic, trying to explain it's just dust. Suddenly, a tall shadow looms over the doorway as Seamus steps inside, dropping down onto one knee before her. Dropping his head in sincere remorse, Seamus clasps his hands and softly apologizes for dragging her into his dangerous department against her will. Layla freezes in absolute bewilderment, her eyes wide as saucepans as she stammers out a confused groan. "What is wrong with this guy?" Layla screams internally, her mind completely melting down over why a powerful duke is dropping on his knees in her tiny, dusty bedroom. Looking up with a subtle blush dusting his cheeks, Seamus gazes into her eyes, softly confessing that, despite everything, he truly needs her. Blush intensifying on his cheeks, Seamus earnestly begs for her help, declaring that he desperately needs someone as extraordinary and talented as Raoul. Layla's cheeks flare bright crimson under his intense gaze. A mysterious silhouette of a towering black wolf appears behind Seamus, revealing a dark magic curse that has plagued his bloodline for centuries. Surrounded by piles of bloody skulls, the cursed bloodline reveals that whenever a Lupesque noble's emotions hit peak intensity, they lose control and transform into a bloodthirsty berserk wolf. Wow, talk about a classic edgy werewolf curse. Layla stares at him in breathless silence, the weight of his desperate plea hitting her right in the chest. Slowly extending his open palm, Seamus reaches out to her like a knight seeking salvation from his savior. Whispering softly, Layla gently places her hand upon his chest, a soft, radiant light shimmering between them as the emotional tension peaks. Seamus tightly clasps her delicate hand within his own, his crimson eyes locking onto hers with absolute devotion. Look at how a simple dust sneeze turned a corporate resignation into a full-blown romantic proposal. Yanking his hand upward, Layla flusteredly begs him to get off the dusty floor already. Seamus offers a tender smile, softly thanking her from the bottom of his heart. As Seamus holds her hand tightly, Layla stares at him with a mix of utter bewilderment and secret intrigue, realizing her peaceful slacker life is officially gone forever. Layla's eyes widen in absolute bewilderment as the reality of Seamus's unexpected words settles over.
With a tender look, Seamus promises to guard her against any threat, softly swearing to keep her safe no matter what obstacles lie ahead. Radiant light glimmers around them as Seamus holds her delicate hand, creating an unexpectedly romantic atmosphere right inside her dusty room. Man, talk about an accidental romance scene triggering in the middle of a messy house cleanup. Meanwhile, inside the shadowy Imperial office, Department Head Edgar sits back with a skeptical glare, questioning Seamus on why he refuses to take Layla out into the field. Seamus stands his ground stoically, reminding Edgar that he was asked to act as her mentor, not to serve as her full-time babysitter. Glaring right back at his superior, Seamus firmly defends his choice, prompting chibi Edgar to snicker over his subordinate's blatant insubordination. A pair of sleek triangular clips set with radiant pink gems sparkles vibrantly in the light. Look at how insanely detailed these protocol uniform accessories are. They look less like standard government badges and more like magical girl transformation items. But in a department obsessed with perfect court decorum, even the smallest accessory has to gleam with pristine royal authority. Edgar leans back in his high-backed chair, silently pondering whether Seamus is simply coddling the girl far too much. Smirking under his breath, Edgar softly murmurs that Layla doesn't exactly strike him as a fragile damsel in distress anyway. Hearing him mutter, Seamus glances down at the desk in confusion, asking what on earth he just said. A sudden memory flashes across Edgar's mind of Layla internally screaming at him to let her go and calling him a jerk of a mastermind. Honestly, if Edgar knew half of what she calls him in her head, he'd probably promote her on the spot. Edgar chuckles quietly to himself in the dim moonlight, finding her feisty nature thoroughly entertaining. Tapping his fingers against the desk, Edgar casually gives Carlisle permission to handle the situation however he pleases. But as the atmosphere grows icy cold, Edgar's expression turns deadly serious under the flickering candlelight. He issues a stern warning, declaring that the more Seamus coddles Miss Lowell, the harder Edgar will test her abilities. Seamus's crimson eyes narrow dangerously as he registers his superior's subtle threat. Crimson dark magic flares violently around Seamus as he vows that if Edgar pulls any shady tricks on Layla, he won't let it slide. Unfazed by the terrifying display of power, Edgar merely offers a cool smirk, murmuring that they'll just have to wait and see. Turning on his heel, Seamus halts his step near the doorway as a sudden thought crosses his mind. He turns back to mention that the financial donations sent to Layla's orphanage seem incredibly suspicious, surprising Edgar. Pointing out how run-down the facility remains despite receiving massive temple grants, Seamus requests a thorough investigation into the funds. Wow, leave it to Seamus to secretly play financial detective just to protect Layla's home. Resting his chin on his intertwined fingers, Edgar smoothly agrees to look into the matter himself. Chibi Edgar cheekily promises to pay extra special attention since it directly involves Miss Lowell, making Seamus's eyebrow twitch in annoyance. Chibi Seamus fumes with a dark aura, thoroughly irritated by Edgar's playful teasing, even though the outcome works in Layla's favor. Turning back, Seamus snarkily advises Edgar to worry about young Finley instead of hovering over his business. A dreamy vision appears of Finley standing surrounded by glowing flowers alongside Layla, sending Seamus straight into a dark pit of petty jealousy. Look at how fast this powerful duke turns into a possessive rival. The next morning, the Grand Palace towers glisten under a sunny blue sky as a cheerful shout echoes through the pristine stone courtyard. Purple-haired Finley leans groggily against a doorframe, looking completely dazed and out of it. Rubbing his forehead with a low groan, Finley struggles to stay upright while Chibi Layla sighs, noting his hilariously terrible low blood pressure in the morning. As Finley stumbles off in the completely wrong direction, Layla frantically shouts at him to wake up and head toward the artifact creation department. Layla lets out a deep, exhausted sigh, wondering how she ended up babysitting her own coworker on day one. Staring blankly, Finley casually extends his arm toward her, telling her to grab on so he doesn't wander off again. Gently grabbing his sleeve, Layla resigns herself to steering him through the palace corridors. Walking side by side, Layla warns him that the artifact creation team holds a bitter grudge against the Black Spoon department and will use any petty excuse to nitpick their work. She grumbles under her breath that she's only doing this favor because she felt grateful for his assistance during the last ministers' meeting. An irk mark pops onto Layla's forehead as she glares sideways, demanding to know why Grapehead is picking fights with her first thing in the morning. Seriously? These two have the chaotic energy of two stressed college students working on a group project. Holding tight to his sleeve, she marches onward with an annoyed pout. Inside the bustling workshop,
Team leader Pedestin casually picks his ear with his pinky finger, dismissively explaining that the communication ear cuffs are designed to monitor field operations. He grumbles arrogantly about special branch agents expecting magical items to appear out of thin air whenever they demand them.
Leela's sweat drops awkwardly, putting on a polite smile as she nervously asks when the requested ear cuffs will actually be ready.
Waving his hands dismissively, Pedestin rudely tells her they'll send the items when they feel like finishing them, scoffing, ordering her to stop nagging. He points to a massive, towering stack of pending paperwork, claiming his team is far too busy to deal with minor requests. Snicker-giggling behind his back, Pedestin and his assistant snicker-mockingly joke that a commoner orphan like her lacks basic manners and should put on survival makeup if she wants favors.
Leela's eyes flash fiery red as a dark, dangerous rage bubbles inside her. Clutching her forehead in deep frustration, she fumes over the fact that these arrogant bureaucrats are playing stupid power games when these ear cuffs are vital for the upcoming crisis. A glowing smartphone text reveals the original novel storyline. Beyond the Golden Gate features 3 major incidents, starting with the notorious kidnapping cases.
A somber scene shows 2 helpless children walking down a dark alley under the moonlight, leaving behind glowing black magic crystal shards where 12 kids mysteriously vanished. Chibi Layla fumes as she remembers Pedestin's smug face, knowing his department's laziness is directly sabotaging the investigation. Clenching her fist tightly in the library, Leela remembers that Pedestin is heavily involved in illegal embezzlement and wonders if she should just expose his corrupt butt right now. Talk about holding the ultimate blackmail card. Face-palming onto the desk, Layla realizes that solving the kidnapping case has to take priority over personal revenge if she wants to prevent her own premature death. Slumping helplessly over her paperwork, Layla groans in misery while Finley sits calmly beside her, completely unbothered by her ongoing existential crisis. Deep in thought, Layla realizes that if she wants to prevent the impending disaster, she needs to clearly recall every single date, location, and detail regarding the upcoming incidents. Suddenly, a brilliant spark ignites in her mind as Chibi Layla sparkles with pure inspiration. Turning straight towards Seamus, she tightly clasps her hands together and leans across the table, startling him completely. With eyes twinkling like dazzling stars, Layla holds Seamus's hands tightly, showering him with praise and asking if he really is the absolute top genius of the magic tower. Look at her pulling out the ultimate flattery tactic. Leaning in close amidst a background of glowing flowers, Layla asks if he knows a magic spell that could help her perfectly retrieve memories from her past. Seamus covers his face, completely flustered by her sudden closeness. Seamus clears his throat, admitting that while a method exists, it's not strictly standard magic. Layla practically jumps across the desk with glowing excitement, begging him to teach her right away. Seamus nervously glances away, trying to keep his cool despite her overwhelming enthusiasm. Layla casually tucks the massive spellbook under her arm and turns to leave, while Seamus rests his chin on the back of his chair, watching her closely. Staring at her back, Seamus internally muses that no matter how closely he looks at her, she really doesn't appear special at all. He finds it utterly baffling that an ordinary commoner girl could possess the legendary talent to see straight into the core of magic. Dark memory flashes across his mind of his younger self standing stiffly while his strict father tightly fixes his collar. His father's cold voice echoes in his memory, warning him that he must achieve absolute perfection at all costs. Young Seamus gasps, panting, as the necktie is yanked tight around his throat, leaving him suffocating under impossible expectations. Man, talk about heavy childhood trauma shaping a character's ego. Shadows creep around Seamus in the present as his father's toxic mantra resonates in his mind, reminding him that if anyone proves superior to him, he is nothing. Leela turns back from the bookshelf and asks if he's sure he doesn't want lunch. Seamus leans heavily against his desk, clutching his chest while panting heavily. When she kindly suggests he head down to the cafeteria first, Seamus aggressively snaps back that he doesn't need to. Bowing his head low while gripping his chair for balance, Seamus stubbornly insists that staying beside her was his own choice. A flashback reminds her of his stern condition, where he demanded she stay by his side at the palace so he could observe every move. Layla lets out a tired sigh, softly muttering that he can suit himself if he wants to suffer in silence. Shrugging her shoulders, she turns back to her books, noting that it's his official break time anyway, not hers. Seamus glares at her back with intense competitive fire, inwardly declaring that he'll hunt down her hidden weakness and break her spirit. Wow, talk about taking a simple group project far too personally. Suddenly, a terrifying wave of dark, crushing energy erupts from Layla behind him, causing Cheapy Seamus to jump out of his skin in absolute horror.
Unaware of his shock, Layla smiles brightly, pointing at her spellbook, cheerfully declaring that she finally found what she was looking for.
Seamus stumbles forward in complete disbelief, asking what on earth she just discovered.
Turning around with a wicked smirk amidst blooming roses, Layla holds up 2 fingers, declaring that her plan will score a perfect one-shot double kill. Meanwhile, in the grand marble corridors, team leader Arthur Pedestin struts arrogantly through the palace while onlookers whisper in the background.
Smoothly running a hand through his slick hair, Pedestin practically glows with toxic pride. He smirks under his breath, internally boasting about how he put those Black Spoon fools in their place yesterday. A dark shadow looms over Layla's stoic face as she recalls his pathetic power trip. Pedestin dismissively chuckles, thinking that the Black Spoon department is merely an inferior sub-branch that needs to learn its proper place. He fumes bitterly as he imagines Seamus and Carlisle surrounded by noble glory, cursing them for acting so mighty based on their ancestral achievements. Historical lore reveals a dark truth. Centuries ago, a mad emperor brutally murdered the empire's sacred saintess. Ever since that tragic bloodbath, whisper softly, no saintess has ever been born again in the empire. Without a saintess to cleanse the deadly black magic, the empire spiraled into chaos, causing the imperial crown's absolute authority to crumble into dust. State control shifted directly into the hands of the prime minister to maintain order. And back during the crisis, the brave nobles who drew their swords against the tyrant emperor were none other than the legendary Lupesque and Crow bloodlines. Honestly, learning the deep political lore really puts all these petty department feuds into perspective. Snapping back to reality, Pedestin kicks the floor in a bitter rage, furious that the Imperial faction dared insult him by sending a commoner girl. He vows to force them onto their knees. Suddenly halting his steps, Pedestin blinks in confusion, murmuring a startled gasp as a dignified noble steps into his path. Surrounded by glowing golden blooms, the handsome Lord Wiswis offers a warm, polite smile, greeting Pedestin smoothly. Pedestin greets him with a nervous smile, asking what brings him by so early, only for Wiswis to sigh and mention he heard terrible news. Wiswis calmly reveals that Pedestin's team was caught illegally smuggling and selling rare laboratory herbs, causing Pedestin's soul to shatter in pure terror. With a sweet, innocent smile, Wiswis adds that he just personally reported the entire scandal to the Ministry of Finance. Look at how effortlessly this handsome lord delivered a total knockout punch. Gently patting Pedestin's trembling shoulder, Wiswis warmly assures him. Moments later, Pedestin is dragged through the hallways in heavy iron chains while onlookers gossip relentlessly. Layla and Seamus watch the chaos unfold from the sidelines. Layla strikes an adorable victory pose, punching the air with pure satisfaction. Walking alongside Seamus, Layla slyly explains that reporting the corruption directly to Chief Theodore was all part of her master plan. Resting her finger on her lip with a villainous smirk, she revels in how smoothly her scheme played out. Slamming her hand down, Layla smirks, declaring that it's time to go enjoy hearing the sweet sound of her enemies complaining. Carlisle leans across the desk with a stern, intense look, asking Layla straight up if she really went behind his back to report the creation team's corruption to Chief Wiswis. In the wooden box, the tiny mandrake root lays bathed in dark magical vapors, prompting Carlisle to question if she traded the official report just to get her hands on this rare herb. Layla sits frozen in her chair with a nervous sweat drop, internally panicking as she realizes she's stuck in an unplanned, high-stakes, three-way confrontation between her mentors. Seamus steps in smoothly, crossing his arms and telling Carlisle that calling it an exchange is way too harsh for what actually went down. Honestly, Seamus coming to her defense like a protective big brother is top-tier office drama. He calmly explains that Miss Rowell simply pointed out the missing herb audit documents, so he merely offered her a well-deserved reward out of genuine gratitude. Leaning down right next to Layla with a sweet, refined smile, Seamus gently asks her to confirm his version of the story. Layla stares wide-eyed, inwardly touched that Seamus is backing her up, yet feeling a heavy wave of guilt knowing she acted impulsively without informing Carlisle. Pushing her chair back, Layla stands up straight, knowing it's only natural for her senior mentor to be upset with her secret report. Lowering her head in a sincere, respectful bow, Layla apologizes directly to Carlisle for stepping out of line. She meekly admits that she acted without thinking out of pure eagerness, causing Carlisle to stumble over his words in a total panic as he stammers that he wasn't trying to scold her at all. Man, look at how fast this terrifying Duke softened up.
Glancing away flustered amidst a backdrop of blooming lilies, Carlisle clutches his chest, softly admitting that he just wanted her to rely on him as her official mentor.
Layla blinks in complete silence, utterly stunned by his sudden emotional vulnerability.
Sparkling like a chibi soldier, Layla gives a crisp salute, brightly promising that she'll strictly follow the proper chain of command from now on. Carlisle gasps in total disbelief, realizing she completely missed his romantic sentiment. Carlisle hangs his head in dark despair, internally groaning over the fact that his sweet confession flew miles right over her dense head.
Recalling Chief Wiswis's strict warning that public displays of affection inside the palace incur heavy fines, Layla holds her hands up defensively, assuring Carlisle not to worry.
Crossing her arms in an absolute X mark, Layla cheerfully declares that she would literally rather die than ever engage in an office romance. Talk about a brutal, swift rejection before he could even confess.
Chibi Carlisle stands completely frozen in shock, turning ghost white as he barely manages to squeak out a response. Holding her mandrake box close, Layla happily skips out of the room, leaving Carlisle standing in dead silence while Seamus watches with a sly grin. Turning his head toward the defeated Duke, calmly calls out Carlisle's title. With a smirking, smug expression, Seamus drops a heavy reality bomb, reminding him that women absolutely despise jealous, overbearing men. Carlisle glares back in disbelief, asking what on earth he means, only for Seamus to sparkle with pride, claiming it's golden advice born straight from personal experience. Man, Seamus dropping relationship advice while playing rival is absolute gold. Meanwhile, as the quiet night settles gracefully over the vast imperial estate, warm glowing lights illuminate the grand stone mansion under a brilliant twilight sky sparkling with purple stars. But beneath this peaceful surface, the web of motives within the protocol team is getting crazier by the minute. Honestly, scenes like this are always the calm before the storm. You just know Layla's quiet slacker dream is about to face absolute chaos once morning hits.
Later that night in her quiet room, the mandrake root floats peacefully in a steaming wooden bowl like it's enjoying a cozy hot spring bath. Layla notes that its magic only restores a tiny fragment of memories. Wearing her nightdress, Layla lifts the blanched mandrake leg with a fork, reading that the memory spell has a full 1-year cooldown and requires chewing on the cooked root. Chibi Layla takes a bite and gnaws on the tough root, groaning in misery as dark purple lightning sparks around her from the awful taste. Suddenly, her pink eyes flash with blinding light as a surge of hidden knowledge unlocks inside her mind. Glowing magic runes float across her vision as the lost details of the original novel instantly crystallize in her memory, making her cry out in triumph. A vivid memory vision appears, showing the novel's heroine Juliana tearfully speaking to Carlisle in a darkened hallway, lamenting that if only she found the missing child sooner. Layla quickly scribbles down the key details, identifying the kidnapping location as the capital's busy 20th district during early evening. Holding up her written notes in her room, Layla smiles brightly, confident that narrowing down the exact time and location is more than enough to stop the crime. Rubbing her eyes sleepily, Layla blinks as a strange blue aura suddenly glows across her room. Right in front of her table, the glowing blue spirit of a handsome armored knight materializes out of thin air, staring down sorrowfully. Layla gasps in sheer shock, her heart pounding wildly as pink shockwaves ripple around her. Tears stream down the spectral knight's handsome face as his phantom voice echoes softly, promising that he will find a way to see her again. Layla stares in total confusion, wondering why a major romance fantasy male lead would be weeping so heart-wrenchingly in front of her. She wonders if it's because he lost his family or carried an impossibly tragic past. Honestly, these web novel male leads really hold the championship belt for tragic backstories. A dark flashback reveals that when Carlisle turned 18, a horrific nightmare struck the Lupesk estate. A terrible dark curse corrupted his bloodline, turning his own family members into bloodthirsty, berserk wolf beasts. Standing alone in a solemn cathedral after the bloodbath, Carlisle mourned the tragedy that claimed his mother's life and wounded countless residents. In the dark night, Carlisle confronted his elders, learning that the 300-year-old curse was cast by ancient black mages, prompting him to vow that he would break it no matter what. With his fierce red eyes burning with determination, Carlisle declared that he would lift the curse regardless of the sacrifice. Back in her room, Layla wonders if the crying phantom was caused by Juliana being on the brink of death in the novel's original timeline. Tapping her chin thoughtfully, Layla ponders if something catastrophic happened to the heroine before she reincarnated. The glowing blue knight turns his head slightly, his spectral gaze filled with deep, lingering sorrow. Placing her hands flat on the desk, Layla slowly stands up, deciding to confront the mysterious phantom head-on.
Stepping close, Layla stands right in front of the tall, spectral knight, staring into his glowing eyes with calm resolve. Tender, bittersweet smile touches the phantom knight's lips as his body begins to dissolve into brilliant, shimmering mana particles. With a soft dissipate, the blue spirit fades completely into the night air, leaving the room quiet once again. Chibi Layla breathes a huge sigh of relief, clutching her chest while sweating over whether overheating the mandrake caused her to hallucinate. Shaken off the spooky illusion, Layla turns back to her desk, glad that she successfully extracted the vital information. Holding up her written clue sheet, Layla taps her cheek, realizing the biggest hurdle remains. How on earth can a counter clerk anonymously deliver this critical lead to the Imperial Knights without raising suspicion? Holding the freshly printed document in her hands, Layla reviews the magical item specs as the palace sun begins to set. Following Pedestin's abrupt arrest, the entire department has been working under extreme discipline, allowing Seamus's team to complete the custom magical device ahead of schedule. Seamus places a pair of shiny triangular pink gem earrings onto the desk, calmly asking if she wants to test them out right away. Layla clips the gem earring onto her ear, excited intake of breath, eagerly waiting for the magical device to trigger. Struggling to see anything, Layla panics, asking if the item is defective. Seamus casually leans back, explaining that the shared vision spell hasn't been linked yet. Man, leave it to Seamus to hand over high-tech magic tech without giving her an instruction manual first. Layla gently taps the gem, wonderingly asking if pressing it activates the link while Seamus watches her with amused eyes. Seamus mentions that the kidnapping report she sent to Lupask was remarkably detailed, leaving the entire Night Order impressed. Resting his chin on his hand, Seamus admits he was surprised she picked the bustling downtown district as the primary search zone. Layla points out that criminals strike best when people drop their guard in crowds. A flashback reveals Carlisle silently studying her detailed clue sheet, his crimson eyes gleaming as he realizes how sharp her tactical instincts really are. Smirking softly, Seamus notes that while Carlisle might not fully grasp her hidden knowledge yet, he undoubtedly respects her results. Talk about top-tier workplace rivalry. These two lords really never miss a chance to measure their influence. Suddenly, urgent knocks rattle the office door as an aide shouts that he needs to enter immediately. Bursting into the room out of breath, the officer yells that a massive emergency has just broken out. Spotting Layla standing by the desk, the officer stammers in surprise before Seamus cuts straight to the point, demanding to know what happened. The aide delivers the terrifying update, causing Layla's pink eyes to widen in complete, horrified shock. Without wasting a single second, Layla dashes out into the hallway as fast as her legs can carry her, while Seamus frantically pursues her, grabbing her arm firmly to bring her to a halt. Seamus pleads with her to calm down, but Layla can barely process the horrifying news. A vivid memory of little Henry's sweet smile flashes through her mind as she internally cries out, wondering why it had to be him. Holding her arms tightly, Seamus reminds her that the orphanage is located way back in District 15, urging her to compose herself so they can act rationally. Honestly, seeing her lose her usual composure proves just how deeply she cares for those children. He reassures her that both the Lupesk and Finley Night Orders have already dispatched elite units to track the suspect's trail. Layla pants heavily, panting, gasping as she asks why on earth they rushed out to the scene themselves if the Knights are already on it. She catches her breath, trying her absolute best to stabilize her racing heart. Seamus places his hands on her arms, gently explaining that their specific role is to locate the hidden hideout where the kidnapper stashed the other victims. Layla quickly gathers her blonde hair, tying it up while Seamus reminds her that they must activate the shared vision spell the moment Henry is located. He swiftly secures her hair into a neat bun, shifting her mindset completely into battle mode. Touching her earring, Layla nods with firm resolve, thanking Seamus for snapping her back to reality. Suddenly, Seamus senses mana ahead and alerts her that they found the boy, ordering her to link her vision immediately. Layla presses the pink gem earring, initiating the visual mana stream with Seamus's eyes. The shared vision spell flashes alive, revealing a dark hooded figure holding young Henry captive in a dim alleyway. Black magical vapors wrap around the unconscious boy as the rogue mage prepares to cast a lethal curse. Purple dark magic explodes across the area as knights scream out warnings of an imminent black magic rampage. Hold on. Black magic rampages are no joke in fantasy worlds. Things just went from a rescue mission to total survival.
A hooded kidnapper leaps backward into the shadows, cursing under his breath as the elite knights swarm the alley.
Carlisle charges forward with the sword drawn, shouting for Layla to switch her shared vision directly over to Seamus's channel.
Layla taps her earring again, recalibrating the magical receiver in an instant.
Monitoring the energy feed, Layla internally notes that this black magic surge is far weaker than the one Juliana faced in the original novel timeline.
As Seamus rushes forward, Layla speaks into the earcom, asking him to step closer so her magic scan can lock onto the source.
Through Seamus's eyes, Layla spots a glowing purple crescent crystal embedded right on Henry's forehead.
Layla immediately shouts into the communicator, telling Seamus that the core catalyst is located dead center on the child's forehead.
Suddenly, young Henry's eyes snap open through the vision feed, locking his gaze directly onto Layla's perspective.
A sinister, distorted voice echoes through the magical feed as the possessed boy chillingly mutters, whispering that he is watching her.
Layla stands frozen in sheer terror, her heart pounding against her ribs as cold sweat drips down her neck.
She panics internally, wondering if the dark mage is somehow communicating directly through the shared vision link.
Her hands tremble as the ominous aura presses against her mind through the magical connection.
The vision screen flickers violently with purple static as the signal begins to break down.
Dark magical noise floods the receiver as the connection falters completely. Seamus slams his hand onto Henry's forehead, unleashing a blast of pure mana that shatters the dark crystal core.
Leela gasps for air as the feedback cuts off, confirming that the purification spell successfully broke the curse. Out in the clearing, Seamus sits on the grass holding the sleeping boy in his arms, announcing softly that Henry is safe and completely unharmed.
Tears of pure relief well up in Layla's pink eyes as the overwhelming fear finally melts away.
Covering her face with her hands, Layla cries tears of joy, sniffling, overwhelming Seamus with heartfelt thanks for saving the child. Resting a gentle hand on her shoulder, Seamus grounds Layla before her thoughts spiral completely out of control. He looks down at her with calm reassurance, softly explaining that they need to move immediately since the royal security detail has arrived on site. Heading out into the dense woods nearby, Layla asks how he knew where the kidnapper's secret hideout was located, to which Seamus coolly replies that magic always leaves distinct lingering traces. Parting the thick foliage, Seamus pauses near a silent clearing, confirming that the rogues chose this exact spot to conceal their operations. Layla peers into the empty landscape with wide, bewildered eyes, questioning why there is nothing visible in front of them except wild trees and grass.
With a swift snap of his fingers, Seamus unleashes a burst of dispelling mana to shatter the cloaking illusion. Man, Seamus really makes high-level dispel magic look like a simple party trick.
Golden magical particles shimmer through the night air, suddenly revealing a secluded wooden cabin hidden in plain sight. Stepping inside the dimly lit doorway, an Imperial officer delivers an urgent status report, confirming 14 individuals are detected in the basement, 12 missing children, and 2 armed guards.
Turning back to Layla, Seamus places an elegantly engraved magical pistol into her hands, firmly commanding her to wait upstairs where it's safe while he handles the assault.
With a charming, confidence-dripping smile that practically glows, Seamus promises to share his vision feed directly so she can monitor every single move from a safe distance. Guns raised and eyes focused, Seamus leads his elite knight unit down the creaky wooden stairs into the pitch-black basement. Reaching the bottom landing, Seamus halts right outside a reinforced wooden door, pointing out that the targets are hiding inside this specific chamber. With a powerful kick, Seamus smashes the heavy wooden door wide open, aiming his firearm directly into the dark room. Talk about a picture-perfect tactical door breach. This man definitely knows how to make a grand entrance. Inside the dim room, 2 hooded rogue mages drop to their knees in utter panic, gasping, screaming out in terror as knights swarm the area. The pink-haired rogue stammers frantically, panting, staring at the Imperial forces in complete disbelief over how their hidden lair was exposed. Keeping his weapon aimed straight at the cultists firmly, Seamus orders his squad to immediately verify the physical condition of the young captives. The knight quickly inspects the children, shouting back to the minister that all 12 missing kids are present, unharmed, and merely placed under a deep sleeping spell. Realizing they are completely cornered, the pink-haired rogue secretly reaches into his inner coat pocket with a malicious scowl. He pulls out a glass vial filled with swirling, pitch-black magical miasma, sneering maliciously that they won't surrender without a fight. Recognizing a volatile dark artifact in an instant, Seamus gasps in horror as the rogue hurls the glass container straight onto the stone floor. The vial shatters into pieces, spewing a dense, choking wave of purple and black magical mist that rapidly consumes the enclosed basement. Honestly, Villain trope number 1. If you're losing, throw a chemical smoke bomb and pray for chaos. Reacting with instantaneous precision, Sheamus deploys a shimmering golden honeycomb barrier that completely seals off his men and the children from the toxic vapor. Unprotected from their own volatile dark artifact, the rogue mages instantly collapse onto the floor, choking on the black clouds as Sheamus mutters how utterly foolish they were. Holding his protective barrier firm, Sheamus coolly notes that detonating an unstable mind artifact in such a tightly enclosed room only serves to destroy the caster. Inspecting the residual purple smoke floating around his palm, Sheamus realizes this specific black magic device is designed to forcibly recreate a target's most agonizing memories. He analyzes the dark energy, recognizing that anyone directly exposed to the psychological miasma would instantly become an inconsolable emotional wreck. Directing his knights to carry the sleeping children upstairs once the vapor dissipates, Sheamus instructs Layla through his communicator to evacuate any curious onlookers outside. Walking back toward the doorway, Sheamus calls into his earcom, growing increasingly uneasy when Layla fails to answer his voice calls. Unbeknownst to the knights, thin trails of dark magical smoke have leaked through the floorboards, creeping quietly up the staircase toward the ground level. Upstairs on the wooden floor, Layla lies completely collapsed and unconscious, panting, trapped helplessly inside the suffocating black mist. A panicked, echoing shout breaks through the void, screaming her name into the darkness as her mind plunges into a horrific psychological nightmare. Inside the traumatic memory loop, Layla finds herself back in her modern Korean past life, sitting silently inside an office restroom stall. Outside the stall, a toxic female coworker stands before the mirror applying lipstick, casually mentioning that their manager's parents just passed away in a tragic car accident. Listening through the closed stall door, past Layla clenches her hands into tight fists, stifled crying, suppressing her grief while the coworker coldly states she'll just send condolence money instead of attending. When the second coworker points out that she was supposed to be close friends with the grieving manager, the girl scoffs in utter disgust, loudly rejecting the idea. The coworker smirks mockingly, like gossip spitting that Layla acts like she's the only real worker in the office, constantly micromanaging everyone over minor typos while acting insufferably uptight. With a cruel, condescending sneer, the woman sneers that attending her funeral would be an utter joke. The vicious, heartless words echo endlessly through the dark void, crushing past Layla's soul as she realizes her former workplace peers secretly despised her whole existence. Man, experiencing betrayal like that in a past life is bad enough, but having a dark magic spell weaponize it against your brain is next level cruel. Back in reality, heavy tears stream down unconscious Layla's cheeks, sniffling, as her mind remains locked in a devastating spiral of grief and isolation. Carrying her tenderly in his arms like delicate glass, Sheamus steps out of the cabin with a deeply pained expression, while despair consumes her spirit. Surrounding her fractured psyche, floating spectral text banners display the agonizing emotional states tearing her apart, betrayal and self-loathing. Under the quiet night sky, Sheamus carefully carries the unconscious blonde back toward the Imperial transport, determined to save her from her own inner nightmare. 2 full days pass across the Imperial capital, with glowing sunlight washing over the majestic palace towers while Layla remains completely unresponsive. Resting inside a luxurious canopy bed, Layla lies pale and still, with palace medics admitting that even high-ranking holy magic failed to awaken her consciousness. Standing outside her private chamber door, Carlyle gazes at her distant resting form, his expression dark as Sheamus notes her current condition is far worse than previous curse incidents. Sheamus reveals the terrifying interrogation results from the captured cultists, explaining that the black artifact's psychological damage is so severe that even if she wakes up, her sanity might be permanently shattered. Carlyle's crimson eyes gleam with intense, deadly fury as he turns toward Sheamus, demanding in a low, dangerous tone what he means by that assessment. Sheamus remains stoic and detached, bluntly stating that standing guard outside her bedroom door all night won't do anything to repair her shattered mind. Losing his cool completely, Carlyle aggressively grabs Sheamus by his silk collar, shouting his full name in absolute rage. Whoa, love triangle tension just exploded into full-blown physical aggression. These two lords are seconds away from tearing the palace apart. Pinning the silver-haired minister back against the wall, Carlyle growls that while Sheamus might not care if Layla ever opens her eyes again, lo, he's certainly certainly does, only for Seamus to calmly warn him that, sarcastic, he's severely misunderstanding his intentions. Seamus stays remarkably cool, even with Carlisle's tight grip around his collar, staring back with unbothered composure as if he holds an ace up his sleeve. Narrowing his vibrant green eyes, Seamus calmly points out that while the situation looks dire on the surface, there might still be an unexpected turn of events. Back inside her tranquil palace bedchamber, Layla lies motionless under the warm blanket, her breath soft as her mind wanders through a deep subconscious state. Deep within the endless darkness of her mind, a distant echoing voice softly calls out her name, trying to pull her back from the abyss. In a hazy, dreamlike void, Carlisle kneels gently beside her collapsed form, holding her hands tightly while desperately begging her to open her eyes. Opening her eyes slightly, Layla sees Carlisle looking down at her with tears streaming past a dark, bruised mark on his cheek. Touched by his raw emotion, Layla softly whispers his name, pleading with him not to push himself into sickness for her sake.
Bright morning light streams over the palace gardens where a small bird chirps on a leafy branch, though a bizarrely dark omen banner flutters in the background reading, "Your life is ruined." Wait, talk about an aggressive morning alarm. Even the Imperial wildlife is dropping savage reality checks today.
Snapping back into reality with a sharp gasp, Layla sits bolt upright in her canopy bed, her chest heaving as her vision clears. Rubbing her throbbing forehead, she glares around the lavish room in total confusion, wondering where on earth she ended up.
Standing nearby with his arms crossed, Lupes turns his head with a low grunt, prompting a startled Chibi Layla to frantically question if it's really her senior standing right there. Looking over her blanket with wide eyes, Layla cautiously calls out his name, trying to process his unexpected presence in her bedroom.
Striding forward immediately, Lupesque leans in close to check her face, anxiously asking if she's finally conscious, only for Layla to burst out asking about Henry and the other captured kids. Seeing her immediate selflessness, Lupesque exhales softly, reassuring her that every single child was pulled out of the hideout unharmed. He adds that she was actually the only victim left unconscious, having remained completely out cold for 3 whole days. A shadowy memory trickles back into her head as Layla recalls standing near the creeping dark smoke right before everything went pitch black. She blinks thoughtfully, suddenly noticing something subtle about her current surroundings that feels surprisingly comforting. Looking down at the nightstand, she spots a neatly folded damp cloth that was clearly used to wipe away her feverish sweat.
Reaching out, Layla softly catches the edge of Lupesque's embroidered sleeve, calling his name in quiet realization. She gazes up into his eyes, asking with genuine warmth if he really stayed by her bedside, nursing her through the entire 3 days. Exposed on the spot, Lupesque's face flares into a bright, flaming red blush as Chibi Layla gapes at his sudden, adorable panic. Oh, look at this tough Sundare noble completely melting. He went from cold Imperial warrior to a blushing tomato in 2 seconds flat. Hastily turning his head away, Lupesque coughs into his hand, trying his absolute hardest to maintain a professional demeanor while stammering that worrying about a junior is basic protocol. He fixes his collar with stiff pride, bluntly insisting that he only did what any decent mentor would do in that situation. A hilarious retro graphic banner flashes above reading Mentor, depicting a stiff Chibi Lupesque standing awkwardly over a confused Chibi Layla. Layla smiles amusedly, chuckling to herself diggle over how silly it was to jump to romantic conclusions, just as Lupesque's magical wrist communicator suddenly crackles to life. Seamus's mini avatar pops up with a stern expression, mocking, commanding Lupesque to stop wasting time on useless distractions and bring himself down to the interrogation room immediately. Lupesque's brow twitches in pure irritation as he growls back at the minister. Fully awake and energetic now, Layla sits up with a bright expression, eager to help resolve the mystery behind the kidnapping scheme. Clenching her hand into a determined fist on the bedsheet, she resolves not to sit idle while dark forces target innocent people. Standing down near the interrogation hallway, young Henry looks up with wide, tear-filled eyes, his face lighting up with overwhelming relief. Spotting her adorable little brother, Layla gasps in pure delight, extending her arms out wide as she calls out his name. Henry sprints across the stone floor and flings himself into Layla's arms for a tight reunion hug. Standing nearby, Seamus remarks on how surprising this sweet reunion is, while Lupesque shoots him a sharp, defensive side-eye.
Lupesk immediately berates Seamus, huffs, demanding if he's lost his mind, dragging a newly awakened girl and a traumatized child directly to a dangerous interrogation floor. Seamus unconcernedly replies that he cast a soundproof magical barrier over the room, so it's totally safe. Seriously, Seamus treats top-tier sound isolation magic like he's just putting on noise-canceling headphones. Inside the shadowed holding cell, the rogue cultist sits slouched in a wooden chair with his hands bound tightly, completely unresponsive. Crossing his arms, Seamus coolly explains that the captive's minds were corrupted by black magic, meaning Layla's unique spiritual restoration powers might be the only way to extract their memories. Lupesk narrows his eyes thoughtfully, agreeing that uncovering the truth behind this plot is essential to guarantee young Henry's long-term safety. Seamus shifts his gaze toward the hallway, his glowing green eyes hinting that there's a far deeper layer to this abduction than a simple street crime. A subtle clue panel highlights Seamus, mentioning that during his preliminary check, the boy revealed a remarkably strange piece of information. Flashback visuals show young Henry playing in the courtyard with a leather ball when an eerie living doll suddenly stepped out of the shadows and snatched his toy away. Layla drops down on one knee in front of Henry, gently holding his hands while carefully asking him to describe every detail of that strange doll encounter. She gasps softly as the realization sinks in, her pink eyes widening in sheer shock over the bizarre clue. A giant stylized impact frame bursts across the screen reading "a doll," emphasizing her complete disbelief. Seamus steps closer, explaining in a serious tone that animating a physical object to perform stealth operations requires extremely high-level black magic artifact. Layla shifts her boots thoughtfully, taking a small step back as she absorbs the terrifying implications of the minister's breakdown. She looks back and forth between the two men, firmly summarizing that these low-level rogue mages were merely puppets, and their primary goal must be hunting down the true mastermind behind the artifact. Seamus offers a faint, mysterious smirk, clearly impressed by her quick tactical deduction. Suddenly, a comical pop-up panel appears with chibi Seamus smugly testing her cognitive recovery. Miss Lowell, what is 19 times 19? Layla blinks with two massive question marks floating over her head, deadpanning back without missing a beat that the answer is 361. Walking toward the heavy door, Seamus chuckles quietly, declaring that her mental faculties are clearly operating at 100%. Layla bristles with annoyance, thinking to herself whether this guy genuinely hoped she suffered brain damage or what. Man, Seamus's idea of a concussion check is popping a random math quiz on a girl who just woke up from a dark magic coma. Reaching out with a firm grip, Seamus turns the heavy iron door handle, unlatching the lock to enter the interrogation chamber. The heavy wooden door swings open into the dark, stone-walled cell, with Seamus leading Layla and Lupesk inside to confront the tied-up rogue cultist face-to-face. Lila steps toward the bound cultist in the interrogation cell with slow, heavy footsteps. The captive rogue mage feebly lifts his head, letting out a strained groan as cold sweat drips down his pale cheek. Suddenly, the cultist screams in agony as dark magic violently reacts to Layla's divine presence, prompting Carlisle to pull her back protectively while shouting her name. Wrapped securely in Carlisle's arms, Layla gasps in utter confusion, anxiously asking why the prisoner is flailing around in such violent pain. Carlisle explains in a grim tone that the black magic corrupting the man's mind is violently repelling her sacred divine energy. Honestly, talk about an extreme allergic reaction. Her holy aura is literally throwing the poor guy into full-blown convulsions. Seamus steps forward, holding out a dark crescent-shaped crystal on his palm, while sternly demanding the captive reveal who crafted the cursed artifact. Drool drips from the cultist's mouth, panting as he twitches wildly, completely overwhelmed by the dark magic sealing his memories. Carlisle maintains a protective stance beside Layla, his eyes narrowed as the prisoner lets out another low, agonized grunt. The cultist's head drops limp against his chest as the violent shockwave fades into total silence. Silence falls over the dark interrogation room as the bound cultist rests completely motionlessly in his wooden chair. When Carlisle attempts to question the minister, Seamus calmly turns around and places a finger to his lips, signaling everyone to stay silent. The brainwashed captive begins muttering under his breath in a hazy trance, dazedly repeating the name of the series group. Shaking violently against his rope bindings, he fanatically shouts that they will reclaim their former glory and restore their proud, noble lineage. Dark, shadowy imagery looms as he rants that neither the Lupesk family nor the Crow family will ever stand in their way again. Wow, talk about a full-on villain manifesto. This guy went from drooling unconscious to dropping top-secret lore in 2 seconds flat.
Seamus listens with a cold, unbothered expression, his sharp green eyes processing every detail of the cultist's wild confession. Standing beside her, Carlisle grows dead silent, the mention of his family's ancient curse sending a visible chill through his posture. Seamus coolly states that they finally identified the true puppet master behind this entire abduction scheme. Layla gasps softly, realizing that if the series group is pulling the strings, there's a far larger conspiracy unfolding. Placing a hand near her lips, Layla pieces the clues together, her pink eyes widening in sheer realization as a specific suspect pops into her mind. A giant impact banner highlights the prominent noble figure connected to this shadow plot, Edgar Crow. A mysterious memory flashes back, showing a pink-haired noble lady confronting Seamus, asking if he truly doesn't care about the citizens suffering from black magic. Seamus offers a faint smirk, asking what makes her think that, only for her to accuse him of deliberately taking zero preventive action. She steps closer, accusing him of standing idle and waiting for the black magic rampage to run its course. Seamus lets out a low, enigmatic chuckle, refusing to deny or confirm her sharp accusation. Shadowy memory visuals reveal fallen victims on the stone floor, noting that a black magic core can only be extracted when a caster enters a berserk state. A hooded figure holds a glowing purple core in his hands, proving the series group intentionally engineered the berserk incidents to farm those cores. Portrait visuals align Seamus and the hooded mastermind together, exposing that both factions are chasing the exact same terrifying goal. Seriously, this political web is so twisted even a spider would get lost trying to trace it. Standing in the interrogation hallway, Layla watches Seamus closely, wondering what grand power someone could possibly unleash by gathering so many cores. She narrows her eyes thoughtfully, remembering that the Crow family was also heavily involved in black magic experiments. Break out the comedy! A hilarious chibi panel pops up with Chibi Seamus cheerfully pumping his fist and declaring the interrogation officially over. Leela's sweat drops in complete embarrassment, frantically panicking inside whether she voiced her inner monologue out loud. Walking down the grand palace corridor behind Seamus, Layla and Carlisle maintain a cautious distance as they exit. Seamus strides forward with his back turned, his calm facade concealing whatever secret agenda he's truly planning. Layla fixes her eyes on his back, mentally warning herself that she needs to exercise extreme caution around the minister moving forward. A dramatic smoke overlay transitions the scene as the heavy interrogation tension fades into the next chapter. Cut to a sunlit study room. A handsome purple-haired young noble sitting at his desk tilts his head, questioning what on earth a black magic core even is. Chibi Layla whispers over a room backdrop, asking what someone could possibly accomplish if they managed to hoard a massive stash of them. Visuals show a shattered hourglass spilling black sand amidst glowing magic shards, explaining that black magic's intense energy waves can even alter or reverse time. The purple-haired young noble rests his arms on the desk, noting that such forbidden magic would require collecting over 1,000 cores. He scratches his neck casually, doubting anyone would go that far since the price is absurdly steep, prompting Layla to slam her hands on the desk, demanding to know what the ultimate sacrifice is. Leaning close, he reveals in a serious tone that the forbidden spell permanently strips away whatever the caster holds most precious. Layla taps her chin thoughtfully, softly asking if most precious means sacrificing one's own family? The memory fades into a silent, dark void, highlighting the hidden emotional trauma buried deep within his past. Snapping back to reality, the purple-haired young noble clutches his wrist as a purple magical energy pulses around his hand. Layla gently reaches out and holds his hands, sincerely thanking him for saving little Henry during the raid. Clasping her hands together with a bright smile, she adds that the corrupt orphanage director was arrested for embezzling funds, meaning the kids will finally have a safe environment. His expression darkens into a cold, distant gaze as he mutters under his breath, asking if family is really that important. Wide shot of the sunlit study room shows him turning back to his typewriter, coldly stating how foolish it is to cling to familial bonds. Leela blinks in shock, stunned as dark aura swirls around him while he reminds her that her own family caused her to get targeted by black magic. Dark vision visuals show Layla trapped in heavy iron chains while protecting young Henry, with the noble warning her that those children will only hold her back in the future. Yikes. Talk about a reality slap. This guy went from helpful research buddy to full villain anti-hero in 10 seconds flat. Purple-haired noble snaps with intense eyes, demanding whether Layla truly believes anyone will ever remember the sacrifices she makes for others.
Layla softly turns back toward him, looking him straight in the eyes as she gently promises that she will always remember. Giant magical clock gears turn in her mind as she explains that even if the rest of the world forgets her, she'll cherish every single person who crossed her path. She gazes into her past memories, noting softly that she holds on to every piece of her life, even the painful moments she once wished to erase. Glowing soft magic sparkles around her blonde hair as she realizes that whether dealing with family burdens or workplace struggles, her heart always operated the same way. Layla covers her eyes with a delicate wipe, leaving the young purple-haired noble completely speechless at her sheer sincerity. Man, gasp. Talk about a soul-stirring speech. She just hit him with the ultimate main character emotional damage. A bright crimson blush explodes across his cheeks as he flusteredly clutches his own trembling hands, totally unprepared for her warmth. Comedy shift. A hilarious chibi panel pops up with Chibi Layla raising her fist in victory, cheering that what really matters is that they only have 2 minutes left until clock-out time.
Chibi Layla blinks in clueless confusion, asking what he was trying to say earlier, only for Chibi Purplehead to deadpan, "Never mind," over a pile of stacked research files.
His sweat drops and reminds her that she can't go straight home today anyway, making Chibi Layla freeze in absolute terror. Layla gasps softly, suddenly remembering that tonight is the dreaded mandatory company dinner party. Talk about modern corporate trauma transcending dimensions. Even in a fantasy world, nobody can escape the dreaded after-work team gathering. Glowing magical glimmers shimmer across the screen as in the scene transitions straight to the lavish royal banquet hall. White-haired Edgar Crow raises a massive foaming mug of beer with a dazzling angelic smile. Top-down shot shows the 4 nobles at the banquet table clinking their giant beer mugs together in a tense toast. Edgar cheerfully urges everyone to feast since Prime Minister Halifax funded the event, while Layla gulps her drink awkwardly, screaming internally over how uncomfortable the atmosphere is. Gazing around the grand hall, Layla admits to herself that the gold chandeliers and central indoor fountain certainly make for a flashy venue. Chibi Edgar cheerfully pours more booze into Layla's empty mug, causing her to inwardly groan in total defeat. Layla holds a brimful beer mug with dizzy swirl eyes, while Edgar beams with absolute mischievous delight holding the wine bottle. Dark, dramatic aura swirls around Chibi Layla as she deadpans inside her head why high-ranking nobles are always such unbearable instigators. Seriously, Edgar is out here serving drinks like a top-tier villain whose main power is peer pressure. Layla glares down at her overflowing foam with a fiery determination, deciding she won't be outdone. Layla lifts the giant mug and aggressively chugs the entire beer in one go. Carlisle panics flusteredly beside her, shouting her name in total horror. Carlisle's jaw drops as his face flushes bright red, watching her drink like a seasoned sailor. Luscious plates of grilled scallops, asparagus, and appetizers rest on the table as Layla realizes 3 fatal miscalculations she just made. She slams the empty glass down, realizing firstly that fantasy medieval alcohol is roughly 10 times stronger than regular beer. Carlisle leans in with extreme concern, softly calling out her name as her head sways precariously. Dark purple aura drops over her flushed pink face as she realizes her second mistake. This body has literally 0 alcohol tolerance. A single comical tear drips down her chin as the sheer power of the alcohol completely overpowers her brain. Suddenly, drunk Layla lunges forward and aggressively buries her face into Carlisle's chest, leaving him utterly frozen in shock. Clinging tightly to his dark noble coat, she lets out a pitiful, tearful sniff, right against his heartbeat. Layla looks up with glossy, tear-filled eyes, sobbing out a dramatic "Senior!" while Carlisle turns completely red, his mind shutting down entirely. Hold on. Look at Carlisle's face. The man went from stoic commander to a tomato red mess in 0.5 seconds flat. She wails her heart out while clinging onto him, leaving Carlisle completely immobilized in a full romantic panic attack. Layla tearfully declares that it's dead, prompting a thoroughly baffled Carlisle to ask what on earth she's talking about. A hilarious Chibi pop-up panel reveals Chibi Layla sobbing hysterically that the beer foam has officially lost its fizz and died. Slurring her words passionately, drunk Layla leans over the table to explain that adding a pinch of salt can bring the beer back to life. She aggressively sprinkles table salt into her glass, causing the beer foam to magically fizz and bubble back up to the top. Beaming with radiant drunk pride, Layla turns to Carlisle asking if she should save his drink next, while Carlisle stammers out her name in absolute disbelief. Edgar Crow offers a charming, sparkling smile while holding up his own glass, teasingly asking if she's gonna save his drink too.
Carlisle glares daggers at Edgar with a heavily flushed face, angrily barking whether Edgar finds her drunk antics funny. Edgar smugly replies that it's hilarious. As Carlisle blames Edgar for getting her drunk, the purple-haired young noble suddenly passes out cold and slams his face right onto the table. Silence falls over the table as the purple-haired guy lays completely unconscious face down, totally KO'd by the booze. Edgar bursts out laughing into his hand while Layla panics and screams at the passed-out noble not to die on them. Edgar coughs back his amusement, dryly noting that neither of the youngsters can hold their liquor, suggesting they call a carriage to head home.
Checking his magical glowing watch, Edgar plans their departure, only for an urgent holographic voice transmission to buzz on his wrist, calling for Lord Crow. Two royal aides step out from the hall, apologizing for the late hour, but announcing that Prime Minister Halifax demands an immediate in-person meeting. Edgar gasps in total shock, asking if it has to be right now, while the magic Riscom confirms the matter is extremely critical. Edgar casts a sharp, reluctant glance backward over his shoulder, tension glinting in his green eyes. Surrounded by dramatic floral visual effects, a hilarious caption notes that Carlisle is going to have an absolutely miserable night dealing with two wasted lightweights. Cut to the quiet exterior of the Grand Academy dormitory under a starry night sky. Carlisle staggers down the path carrying the passed-out purple-haired noble on his back, panting, while dormitory guards cry out in shock seeing Lord Rufus completely out cold. Carlisle staggers up to the male dormitory manager with passed-out Rufus slouched heavy over his back. The manager blinks in surprise, introducing himself as the supervisor of the male dorms while asking what brought him here so late at night. Handing the unconscious purple-haired noble over, Carlisle breathes out a long exhale, asking the manager to take good care of Bing for the night. The manager nods politely, assuring him not to worry about a thing. Carlisle runs a hand through his dark hair, relieved that one lightweight is finally taken care of. He whispers under his breath that at least Finley's in safe hands now. Carlisle turns back towards the carriage, planning to deliver Rowell next, only to freeze in utter disbelief. Sitting alone in the carriage interior, Layla is sobbing uncontrollably with bright pink flushed cheeks. Seriously, this guy had one job, drop off the drunks, and now he's stuck playing personal caretaker for the entire night. Stepping closer to the carriage door, Carlisle asks in total confusion why she's crying so hard. Lila looks up at him with tear-streaked eyes, pitifully sniffling that she desperately needs a hangover cure right now. Whimpering dramatically with flushed cheeks, drunk Layla blushes and slurs out that what she really wants is melon ice cream. Carlisle stands totally speechless, his crimson eyes wide with a mix of utter shock and flustered embarrassment as he stares at his erratic junior. Drunk Layla aggressively grabs Carlisle's collar, wailing hysterically that a 3-year slave isn't even allowed to eat ice cream. Carlisle's face turns beet red as he internally freaks out, wondering if she's being cute or completely insane. Wait, is she really pulling the 3-year slave card over melon ice cream? The drama is off the charts. Carlisle panics and immediately yells out to ask if any nearby dessert shop is still open.
Cut to a sparkling glass of iced melon soda topped with a generous scoop of vanilla ice cream and a sweet red cherry. Sitting side by side on a stone bench, Layla happily munches on her melon dessert with a tiny spoon while Carlisle sits beside her, resting his face in his palm from sheer mental exhaustion. Layla beams with pure joy, humming happily about how much she adores melon flavor. Watching her eat, Carlisle's tense expression softens as a gentle, fond smile spreads across his face, whispering softly that he's glad she stopped crying. Suddenly, Layla gasps in excitement and points toward the Dark Night River, loudly proclaiming that there's another giant melon over there. Carlisle blinks in confusion, asking what on earth she's looking at. A comedic chibi Carlisle deadpans in the background as the water ripples, pointing out that it's literally just the moon reflecting on the river water. But chibi Layla is already singing cheerful tunes, completely ignoring him. Hold on. Did she just mistake the moon's reflection for a giant floaty melon? She is officially 5 levels beyond wasted. Before Carlisle can react, drunk Layla hitches up her long skirt and dashes straight toward the water bank. Carlisle panics, shouting out her name in total horror. Carlisle reaches out urgently, panting, warning her that it's pitch black outside and she'll lose her footing if she gets too close to the edge. Layla pulls off her shoes and steps barefoot directly into the glowing crystal blue night water. Look at the lighting in this shot, though. The artist really turned a chaotic drunk Wade into a majestic fairy tale artwork. Layla happily splashes around in the current, giggling wildly, while celebrating that it's a real river. Carlisle gasps in total shock, watching her reckless behavior in full panic mode.
Rushing down the stone steps after her, Carlisle stretches out his hand, desperately calling for Raoul to come back onto dry land.
Carlisle lunges forward and firmly grabs her waist to pull her back, sternly warning her that the Summersby River swells dangerously at this time of year.
Drunk Layla sways precariously in his grasp, slurring out that she's totally fine because she's an amazing swimmer, dramatically yelling at him to let her go. Famous last words right before an accidental river dip. Never trust a drunk person saying, "I'm a great swimmer."
Her wet bare feet slip right on the slick riverbed stones. Carlisle gasps out, telling her to calm down before they fall.
Losing her balance entirely, Layla tumbles backward right into Carlisle's chest, sending both of them crashing straight down into the riverbed. Massive, towering wave of water explodes into the air as the two of them plunge into the river together. Silence falls over the riverbank as Carlisle and Layla sit drenched in the shallow water dripping continuously from their hair and clothes.
Layla drunkenly cups the cool water in her hands, softly smiling with flushed cheeks as she mutters that the water feels super cold today too. Wait, she literally just fell into a river and her first thought is the water's cold today too? Zero survival instincts, pure vibes.
Carlisle stares at her wet, smiling face, his own cheeks flushing bright pink as a soft, helpless chuckle escapes his lips. Soft, magical light radiates from Carlisle's hand as he gently reaches out toward her drenched golden hair.
Carlisle tries to cast drying magic over her head, but pauses flusteredly, admitting that he's too distracted to focus properly. Layla giggles playfully, teasing him that there's finally something the great senior can't do. Wrapping his heavy, noble coat around her shivering shoulders, Carlisle watches quietly as Layla lowers her head, her drunk expression subtly shifting into a somber, distant gaze. Layla gazes up at him through her blonde hair, softly asking out of nowhere if Carlisle will come to her funeral if she dies. Carlisle freezes in absolute shock, his red eyes wide with dark foreboding. Whoa, gasp, going from a silly drunk talk to a dark funeral premonition panel? Talk about emotional mood swings. A haunting flash-forward vision appears showing Carlisle standing alone in a dark, silent cathedral before a grand altar, staring at an empty funeral venue. Snapping back to the present, Carlisle's gaze turns dark and intense, his voice dropping into a tense whisper as he asks her what on earth she's talking about. Layla buries her face into his chest, tearfully pouting that it's mean he couldn't answer immediately when they spend over 8 hours together every single day. Looking up with glossy, heart-wrenching eyes, Layla whispers sadly that she supposes they'll be nothing to each other after her resignation anyway. Carlisle immediately cuts her off, firmly stating that's not true. Standing tall over her on the stone bench under the starry sky, Carlisle places a tender, protective hand on her head. Layla gazes up at him with trembling pink eyes as Carlisle speaks softly, confessing that if she doesn't mind, he wants to stay by her side even after that. Carlisle steps forward and wraps his arms tightly around her, pulling Layla into a deep, tender embrace. Layla's eyes widen in utter shock inside his warm chest, softly whispering his name in disbelief. Suddenly, the carriage aide shouts at the top of his lungs from the bridge, yelling that he finally found the young Duke. Of course, the classic romance webtoon rule. Just as the confession hug happens, the side character driver shows up to ruin the tension. The driver swings the carriage door open, explaining breathlessly that he searched everywhere after not finding them at the dessert shop. Inside the carriage, Carlisle sits with the sleeping, exhausted Layla slouched against him. The aide asks if he should take her to the female dormitory, but Carlisle instantly rejects the idea with a cold no. Layla sleeps peacefully against Carlisle's shoulder, her flushed face resting against his dark coat, as Carlisle notes that curfew has already passed. Gently wrapping his arm around her resting figure under a shower of glowing magical light, Carlisle softly declares that they'll be going to his personal mansion instead. Wait a minute. Gasp, taking her straight to his personal mansion because curfew passed? Carlisle is not even hiding his motives anymore. Cut to the majestic exterior of the Duke's grand estate, brightly illuminated under the deep blue midnight sky. Carlisle strides through the grand front hall, carrying the sleeping Layla bridal style in his arms while the head butler and maids bow in absolute shock. Silver-haired butler flinches in total disbelief, shouting, "Out young Duke?" with wide, baffled eyes. Carlisle walks past the stunned servants without slowing down, casually explaining that she's a junior from his imperial department and an emergency situation came up. Comedy shift? A hilarious chibi panel pops up with the butler rubbing his chin in deep suspicion while chibi Carlisle turns bright red, barking at the butler to shut up because it's nothing like what he thinks.
Look at the butler's face. The man is connecting all the dots in real time, and Carlisle is sweating bullets. His playful tone disappears as he steps closer with a serious expression, informing Carlisle that he must deliver an urgent report right now. Dark, heavy aura drops over the hall as the butler reveals that Carlisle's father, the Archduke himself, visited the mansion earlier today. Picking up right where we left off, Carlisle cradles the drenched and utterly exhausted Layla against his chest. Flustered, embarrassed, his red eyes wide with lingering shock as he lets out a quiet, helpless sigh. The romantic tension instantly evaporates as a towering, stern figure looms over them. It's none other than Carlisle's intimidating father, Archduke Lupesk himself. A breathtaking morning feast is laid out across the dining table, overflowing with mouth-watering delicacies and fresh gourmet fruits on silver platters. Talk about royal treatment. The narrative frame perfectly captures the vibe, highlighting that this is literally the quintessential mansion straight out of a romance fantasy novel. Leela quietly sits at the massive table, delicately sipping her morning hangover soup with a small spoon while trying to stay as invisible as possible. The reality of the situation hits her like a freight train. Poor Layla is sweating bullets as the Archduke warmly tells her to make herself at home, while she internally screams in absolute horror about having hangover cure soup with her boss's terrifying father. Talk about the ultimate workplace nightmare. Blushing with deep embarrassment, Layla nervously clutches her spoon, wondering why on earth her chaotic memories from last night have to be so crystal clear. Sitting across the table, Archduke Lupesk gestures gracefully as he speaks. Layla remembers that this man is the absolute strongest power in the kingdom, carrying authority that easily rivals the emperor. Carlisle breaks the silence, asking his father in a cold, guarded voice exactly how long he's been staying at his private mansion. The Archduke casually replies that he came to check on him since he hadn't heard from him, but Carlisle immediately snaps back that he sends official updates all the time. Boom! The Archduke brutally slams his palm onto the table, furiously shouting that those useless department reports don't count as keeping in touch. Leaning right across the table, the Archduke roars that his son refused his noble title under the excuse of being busy, only to bring home a secret bride without saying a word. Layla's mind completely freezes as soup literally drools out of her mouth. Did he just say marry? The misunderstanding is leveling up at light speed. Carlisle turns beet red, furiously yelling that they aren't in that kind of a relationship. But his father points an accusing finger, declaring he saw them embracing with his own two eyes. Meanwhile, Layla literally turns into a crumbling stone statue in the background. The Archduke smirks playfully with glittering sparkles, while Carlisle stammers out endless excuses, and Layla continues losing her absolute mind over the absurd drama. Comedic chibi Layla wails internally, praying for a miracle to escape this insanely awkward cross-examination. Trying to salvage her dignity, Layla nervously blurts out that she's just a commoner, but the Archduke leans in close, praising her for beating out entitled nobles through pure, unadulterated talent. The Archduke chuckles approvingly, proudly declaring that she has the ferocious, unyielding spirit of a true northern warrior. Comedic chibi Layla drops her head in total defeater attempt to sound incompatible just made the old man like her even more. You literally cannot win against a Manhwa father-in-law. Setting her utensils down neatly on the linen napkin, Layla takes a deep breath and decides to address the Archduke directly. With a firm, serious expression, Layla directly clarifies that there is strictly no romantic relationship between her and her senior. Carlisle's eyes dim into a heavy shadow as he listens to her absolute denial. Carlisle's face turns dark and moody, but the Archduke immediately pivots, scolding Carlisle for dragging such a talented young lady into his dangerous secret investigations. Carlisle stares down in sullen silence, his crimson eyes gleaming with silent frustration as the scolding continues. The Archduke's voice drops into a stern, unforgiving command, warning Carlisle that he and that crow brat have completely lost their minds, ordering him to abandon this impossible quest once and for all. Carlisle's shoulders tense up as he whispers bitterly under his breath that his father gives up way too easily. Looking up with dark intensity, Carlisle reminds his father that countless innocent people have already perished in their northern territory. Standing up abruptly from the table, Carlisle firmly declares that he will never back down, coldly telling his father to abandon his hopes for his marriage prospects instead. Turning away from the tense confrontation, Carlisle gently tells Layla that it's time for them to leave, prompting a flustered chibi Layla to quickly scramble after him. Layla bows with deep respect toward the Archduke before following her senior out of the grand dining hall. From a high overhead view, the shadow of the Archduke remains standing in the hallway as Carlisle and Layla walk side by side down the long carpeted corridor. corridor. Outside, their luxury carriage smoothly travels along the sunlit tree-lined path. Layla glares out the window, quietly asking if it's really fine for them to storm out like that. Inside the quiet carriage interior, Carlisle sits in brooding silence, resting his chin against his knuckles in deep thought. Carlisle sighs softly, noting that his headstrong father wouldn't listen to a single word of reason in that emotional state anyway. Layla gazes across at him with genuine concern, sensing the heavy burden weighed down on his shoulders. A sinister flash-forward vision darkens the screen. Dramatic whisper. Layla remembers the grim fate written in the original story timeline. In the original plot, Archduke Lupask meets a tragic, bloody end, lying lifeless on the marble floor beside his fallen walking cane. Whoa! Talk about a sudden high-stakes plot twist hanging over their heads. Overcome by grief and fury over his father's death, Carlisle loses control and transforms into a terrifying dark wolf monster inside the palace, revealing his hidden beast identity to the entire empire. Layla knows this catastrophe will permanently ruin the Black Spoon department. Leela stares at Carlisle's solemn face, resolving that she must prevent this assassination at all costs, if only to secure her own peaceful resignation. Softening her tone, Layla gently points out that despite his harsh words, the Archduke seemed deeply worried about Carlisle's well-being. Carlisle waves it off as unnecessary fussing, promising that once they uncover the main clue, everything will wrap up smoothly. Layla pouts in annoyance, muttering about how stubbornly dramatic male leads always are. Carlisle pauses, gazing down thoughtfully before asking Layla what she plans to do after this whole ordeal finally comes to an end. Leaning forward slightly, Carlisle suggests that if she shares her future goals, it might put his father's mind at peace. Comedic Chibi Carlisle admits he tries not to dream about the future, while Chibi Layla cheekily thinks it's because he's afraid of losing his sharp combat edge. Layla's face brightens as she imagines her dream post-retirement life, packing a picnic basket full of chocolate chip cookies for a sunny seaside vacation. Sparkling visuals of delicious strawberry sundaes and fluffy whipped cream pancakes pop up. Layla happily gushes about relaxing in charming cafes without a single work email. Clasping her hands together in pure delight, giggle, Layla hums about buying that luxurious music box she's been eyeing for months. Look at her sparkling eyes, she's living her best fantasy. Suddenly, Carlisle glides across the carriage seat, closing the distance until his face is hovering mere inches from hers. He whispers softly, asking what else she wants to do. Framing them in a spectacular wreath of blooming pink roses, Carlisle gently reaches out and cradles her hands, looking into her eyes with an unbelievably fond, melt-your-heart smile chuckle, softly asking, "And having melon-flavored ice cream together?" My heart just stopped. He remembered her drunk rambling from last night. Talk about peak romance. Layla's eyes widen in sheer disbelief as Carlisle's words register, flustered, embarrassed, her face flashing beet red as she stammers out a completely stunned pardon? A hilarious flashback bubble instantly flashes in her mind, recalling the exact chaotic moment from last night where she hung on to Carlisle like a needy koala, wailing at the top of her lungs about wanting melon ice cream. Realization hits her like a tidal wave as she turns bright pink in total embarrassment. Poor Layla is internally screeching over the fact that her senior remembered every single word of her drunken nonsense. Talk about ultimate secondhand embarrassment. Back inside the carriage, comedic chibi tears stream down Layla's face as she buries her head, bowing repeatedly to apologize for her mortifying behavior yesterday. Carlisle just rests his hand on the backrest, chuckling awkwardly at her over-the-top dramatics. Framed by soft, blooming pink petals, his fond message echoes back with sweet promise. He promises to think about taking her out for that melon ice cream after all. Leaning across the velvet seat, Carlisle gazes into her eyes with a tender, breathtaking look, his crimson eyes softening with a genuine affection that would make any reader's heart completely skip a beat. The scene smoothly shifts back to the imperial capital, leaving the sweet romantic tension hanging in the air as our main duo heads straight back toward their primary headquarters. Talk about a flawless transition after that massive romantic buildup. Bright morning light floods the grand facade of Black Spoon Department Estate, signaling a fresh new day of chaotic investigative work for our favorite squad. Inside the archives, Seamus sits slumped at his desk looking like an absolute zombie, clutching his throbbing temple while Layla peers over with deep concern, asking if he's doing all right after last night's drinking spree. Seamus grumbles in total agony, rubbing his head as he admits he's never felt a hangover this brutal before, chuckling, vowing to build up his alcohol tolerance before ever stepping into a tavern again.
Layla offers a cheeky tip about training his liver, but before she can finish, the door slowly creaks open. An adorable white fluffy cat wearing a tiny messenger bag peeks its head inside. The adorable white feline steps into the room with sparkling effects, proudly announcing itself as Popo, the magical animal. Layla springs out of her chair in absolute shock, utterly mesmerized by the cute creature. Popo hops right onto the wooden desk, greeting Layla super politely as Miss Lowell. Look at that tiny bow tie. Is this not the most precious government worker you've ever seen? Pulling out a glittering silver feather quill from its leather bag, Popo smoothly explains that it has arrived on behalf of the magic department to conduct an official artifact survey. The magical pen floats in midair, automatically filling out official survey documents. Popo casually licks its paw, remarking that human response rates are way too low, so magical beasts have to handle administrative work now. Honestly, same. Cats make better administrative assistants anyway. Layla cannot resist the cuteness and gently pets Popo beneath its chin. The little beast purrs happily, confirming that its magical messenger gear fits perfectly and feels super comfortable. Smiling warmly, Layla asks if Popo has already tested out the earring artifact's advanced features, specifically its recording, audio capture, and playback capabilities. Popo rummages through its tiny satchel while the floating pen finishes writing, casually mentioning that the creation team probably forgot to explain those features to her. Layla tilts her head in mild confusion. Popo places its fluffy white paw squarely onto the finished document, leaving a cute official stamp mark on the parchment. Glowing text surrounded by white rose graphics urges Layla to test out the earring's hidden playback functions and report back with her feedback. Waving its bushy tail cheerfully, Popo trots back toward the doorway, wishing them a great day as Layla waves goodbye with a sweet smile. Seamus watches the door close in complete awe, commenting on how incredible it is to see a talking magical animal in person, wondering why the magic tower doesn't deploy them more often. Seamus notes in chibi form that highly sophisticated beasts like Popo are extremely rare. Meanwhile, Layla pulls her chair forward, eager to test out her earring artifact right away. Layla settles into her desk and spreads out the manual, deciding it's time to thoroughly examine every hidden capability built into her magical accessory. Reaching up with delicate fingers, Layla lightly touches the pink crystal dangling from her earlobe, activating its internal mana flow. Suddenly, a bright azure light erupts from the crystal, casting a glowing holographic screen right in the middle of the dark library room. The flickering blue projection displays a sinister memory replay, showing the dark hooded sorcerer standing right behind young Henry. Layla gasps in shock, realizing the artifact was set to record by default during that encounter. Seamus immediately leans over her shoulder to inspect the glowing projection, pointing out that the memory log must have automatically triggered during the altercation. As Seamus closely examines the moving image, his eyes widen slightly as he detects something eerie in the boy's facial expression. The hologram zooms in on young Henry sitting motionless at the desk, his face shadowed while the dark sorcerer looms directly overhead like a puppet master. Layla's eyes narrow as she stares at Henry's blank, glassy gaze in the recording, realizing there's a hidden message encoded in his subtle movements. Covering her mouth in total shock, Layla decodes Henry's lip movements, realizing with horror that the boy was actively speaking to someone through the spell. The atmosphere instantly drops to absolute zero. Layla's crimson eyes dilate in terror as the dark truth dawns upon her. A holographic replay locks onto young Henry's haunting face as he's silently mouthing a chilling message directly into the camera. "You saw me too, didn't you?" My goodness, that sent actual shivers down my spine. Cut to a grand overhead shot of the office. Carlisle and a distinguished silver-haired nobleman step into the room, joining Layla and Seamus as they analyze the haunting holographic projection together. Stroking his chin thoughtfully, the silver-haired nobleman confirms that Layla's lip reading is spot on. However, he notes that no traces of dark magic were found on Henry's body, which means someone from the series syndicate was using him as a living camera. A dark, misty visual overlay reveals the terrifying reality. The mastermind behind the series group is literally watching Layla through Henry's eyes the entire time. Layla stands frozen, her heart hammering against her chest as she realizes the enemy has already identified her face and presence. Stepping toward her superiors, Layla nervously asks why on earth a high-level syndicate leader would go to such extreme lengths just to track her down. The silver-haired noble gestures gracefully, admitting with a calm, calculated look that he actually actually happens to have a very plausible theory. Carlisle lets out a low, heavy sigh, his expression darkening into a moody scowl as he anticipates the complicated explanation about to unfold. Suddenly, the heavy double doors click open, drawing everyone's attention toward the doorway. Layla turns around, her breath catching in her throat as a familiar, elegant figure steps into the sunlit room. Surrounded by a radiant halo of blooming white lilies, Priest Lumiere bows with holy grace. Layla blurts out his name in utter astonishment. A hilarious side panel cuts to a pitch-black, cobweb-covered creepy closet filled with growing mushrooms right next door. Chibi Layla asks why he was hiding in there, and Lumiere pitifully admits Carlisle forced him to stay locked in the dark room until called. Talk about petty male lead behavior. Stepping forward with gentle reverence, Priest Lumiere tenderly takes Layla's hands into his own, asking if she remembers their previous conversation. Looking deeply into her eyes with earnest devotion, Lumiere softly reveals that he conducted a thorough background investigation into her family lineage.
Chibi Lumiere leans in close to a petrified Chibi Layla, teasingly whispering that she completely forgot all about his divine promise.
Holy divine energy bursts into a radiant floral frame. Lumiere drops the ultimate megaton revelation. Her mana wavelength is a 100% exact match to the realm's last legendary Sainess. What? Layla is the lost Sainess? This plot twist just blew the entire story wide open.
As the majestic halo fades into view, the glowing phantom of the realm's ancient Saintess looms directly behind Layla, confirming that her dormant mana wavelength is a flawless match.
Layla stands completely frozen, her mind spinning as she stammers out what on earth this whole crazy revelation is supposed to mean for her quiet life. Priest Lumiere glides right up behind her, gently explaining that he made sure to report this shocking bloodline discovery to the higher-ups before bringing it to her. Swirling, mind-bending magic envelops Layla as she floats in absolute disbelief. Try to wrap her head around the mind-boggling news that she's literally the direct descendant of the legendary Saintess. A hilarious light bulb goes off in her head as she connects the dots, wondering if her holy bloodline was the exact reason that dark magic kidnapper lost his mind during the interrogation room showdown. The silver-haired nobleman steps forward with a radiant grin, confirming her theory since a Saintess possesses the unique divine ability to instantly purify corrupt dark magic. Talk about a cheat code hidden in her blood. Resting a polite hand on Lumiere's shoulder, the nobleman warmly welcomes Miss Lau, while Lumiere frantically pleads for her to be transferred straight into the temple's official custody. Carlisle's face darkens into a severe scowl as he listens to the Holy Temple trying to claim his precious junior right in front of his face. Glaring intensely at the holy delegates, Carlisle firmly reminds everyone that joining the temple is a life-altering choice that belongs solely to Layla herself. Honestly, look at him protecting his girl. Carlisle is definitely not about to let the church steal his favorite coworker. The silver-haired nobleman gracefully concedes the point with a gentle smile, admitting that Carlisle makes a completely valid argument. Turning toward Leela with an expectant look, the nobleman directly asks what her own personal wishes are regarding her future. An internal mental scale appears inside Layla's mind. On one side sits a cozy lifetime career with high pay, while on the other lies her dream of finishing this case and securing an instant resignation. The scales violently tilt toward the overworked corporate trap as Layla realizes taking the Saintess title means working forever without a single day off. Without missing a beat, Layla bows politely and flat-out rejects Priest Lumiere. The poor priest collapses onto the floor in dramatic comedic despair, wailing at the top of his lungs over the instant rejection. Wiping away his theatrical tears, Lumiere trudges out of the room like a defeated puppy, leaving behind his holy ambitions. Holding up the official paperwork, the silver-haired noble confirms that the non-disclosure agreement is fully signed and secured, protecting her secret identity. However, his tone shifts to a serious note as he warns that they still need to establish a strict 24-hour personal escort for Miss Lowell. Layla tilts her head in surprise, but the nobleman emphasizes that since the Saris Syndicate was spying on her, they cannot afford to take any chances with her safety. Carlisle steps forward instantly, adjusting his high-collared tunic while announcing that he will personally take full responsibility for guarding her. Layla turns bright red, sweating buckets as she realizes her moody senior wants to spend every single second by her side. Layla nervously stammers whether he's way too busy with actual high-level department work, but Carlisle's
smoothly replies that her safety comes first, and he'll gladly sleep less just to handle both. Before she can process Carlisle's intense dedication, Seamus casually steps up as well, calmly stating that he'll be joining the guard rotation to observe her closely. Layla's head spins as she frantically waves her hands, telling both of her overprotective superiors that they are already doing far too much. Shadow lines wash over Layla's face in deep horror as the silver-haired noble happily concludes that having multiple top agents mark her closely is the ultimate protection plan. The handsome squad instantly huddles together to organize a grueling shift schedule, Carlisle claiming Saturdays, the nobleman setting 4 p.m. rotations, and Seamus demanding bi-hourly status reports. Seriously, this isn't protection, this is 24/7 corporate surveillance. Dark, cosmic background text dramatically marks the beginning of Layla's inescapable new reality. The camera pulls back to reveal the magnificent exterior of the department estate bathed in sunset hues, proving that even away from her desk, she has zero escape from work. Layla clutches her throbbing head as comedic tears stream down her cheeks, screaming at the top of her lungs about how much she utterly despises the terrifying life of a 24/7 office worker. Talk about the ultimate relatable corporate nightmare.